This is Pokemon Elysium, potentially the most intricate and longest ROM hack we have ever seen on the channel. It quite literally has two different parts where you can do everything your heart desires. In part A, we see more of the traditional Pokemon storytelling, where the main character goes on their own Pokemon gym journey, and along the way, even turns herself into a Pokemon Ranger, which helps out a ton of people. But in the second part, things start to turn otherworldly. I'm talking drastic changes from the reality you know and love, which basically turns it into somebody's worst nightmare. And now you and the biggest roster of friends you'll ever see are the only ones that can turn things back to normal. And today, I'll be guiding you through the entire experience that Pokemon Elizium has to offer. So get comfortable, strap in, grab your bucket of popcorn, and enjoy this mind-blowing story. We get introduced to the world of Elysium by the local Pokemon professor, Rama, but he's also a wine enthusiast. He explains that Pokemon can be used as a lot of different things, even war machines, and that one of his previous assistants did unspeakable things with a Ditto, so he had to fire him. Let's try and leave stories like that for the daycare. We then get introduced to the main girl character and her best friend and rival, Brendan. My story starts 20 millennia after a war between something called the Enlightened Men and regular folk. In this moment, a young girl from Krista Island began her journey to become a Pokemon master. We wake up in our room and immediately go downstairs where we get greeted by Mom. She's so excited that her little baby girl is going on her own Pokemon journey and wishes me the best of luck. And after giving her a peck on the cheek and leave the nest just to run into the local bully, April. For whatever reason, she hates my guts and always tries to get in my way, and today is no different. Normally, we would have to go to the professor together, but she used her rich uncle's money to get a head start and pick her Pokemon before me. On top of this, she's also told Brendan about this, and he's already going to pick his Pokemon too, meaning we might not even have a choice of starter. So we scold at her and rush to the lab where we do indeed run into Brendan, who's already picked Totodile. But I don't really mind that he got the pick before me because he's actually a really nice guy. We arrange a meeting with him for later, enter the lab, and notice that the professor is a little wasted after he calls me his Cuckoo Puku. I don't pay too much attention to this and head straight to the table where we find our starting Pokemon, Cyndaquil. In my opinion, the second best Johto starter, but I'll take it. From here on out, the professor tells me to go out on my gym journey and gives me a Pokedex so we can start making our way to the port of Arena, where we should also be able to challenge our first gym. As I start walking down the beach, we run into a longtime friend of ours named Philillip. He went out on his own Pokemon journey months ago and is now back to visit his sisters who live in our hometown. But even though he's a way more experienced trainer than me, I still challenge him to a Pokemon battle, which we ended up losing in a couple of seconds. But I am of the belief that without loss, you can't grow, so this actually doesn't bother me too much, and he even tells me that I did really great for my first ever battle, and goes on to hand me a pair of running shoes, which will make traversing the region a lot easier for me. We leave Philip behind, but not even 2 seconds later, April is already up to new shenanigans, by bribing a couple of rookie trainers to try and slow me down so she can get the gym badge first. These were of course easy pickings for me and my Cyndaquil, but besides this, we also see something very peculiar. A scientist and a mysterious man that looks sort of like a crook are researching the area. For now, I let it go, but I definitely need to try and remember what that guy's costume was looking like. After this, we nearly reach the local town before we get stopped by April again. Seems like karma finally caught up to her because she lost her very first gym battle, and now she's coming back to the beach to grind up her team. I of course make fun for her, this riles her up a bit, and then a battle between the both of us ensues. Our little fiery mouse might not have any fire attacks, but with my Leer and Tackle combo, April became easy pickings. With her second loss already under her belt, we confront her about the trainers she hired to slow us down, but denies that she ever did a thing like that. Petty behavior, but as you can see, the bigger man always ends up winning. Or should I say woman. But her pettiness didn't end there, because I wanted to go and pick up some Pokeballs to upgrade my team. And she bought all of them out, meaning that I'm stuck with the Cyndaquil for now. On the beach to the north, we save a couple of seals. Not because they were in danger, but because this guy was observing them in a very weird way. Now that we dealt with this creep, I wanted to take a shot at the gym, but Brendan ends up walking out at the same time, and told me that he used grass-type Pokemon to overpower his water types. But this doesn't really make any sense, because April told me that they used a Slugma against their Chikorita, so there might be something fishy going on with the gym leader if he's using different Pokemon against different opponents. weaknesses. But type weaknesses or not, we still overpower Brendan and his Totodile with our Cyndaquil, then wish him luck on his next attempt, but we're not going into the gym ourselves yet, because we suddenly saw a very interesting guy standing next to the Pokemon Center. His name turned out to be Gray, and he's an agent of the Pokemon World Association, and he's here to investigate the suspicious gym leader activity. He thinks that the gym leader somehow gets information about other trainers so that he can indeed use the best typings against them. He thinks this operation is being run somewhere to the forest east of here inside of a hut. But there's one big problem. A dangerous Sylveon is roaming around there and he doesn't really have any Pokemon to fight it, which is why he ends up asking for my help. Since we're somebody that wants to help people, we join a group of Sylveon hunters and chased it around until we found the suspicious hut. But upon entering, we were surprised to see Gray and his Ghastly, and while I'm trying to put the puzzle pieces together, he orders it to use hypnosis on me and apologizes for what he's about to do. As I fell asleep, I started to have this really weird dream where I chased around a Celebi and ran into this little girl with her Cubone standing next to a graveyard. She says that I'm not one of these people and that I've been brought here by mistake. And then in a white flash, I woke up a couple of hours later not knowing what happened, but when I checked my bag, I saw that my Cyndaquil was gone, leaving me with no Pokemon at all. A terrible situation because the moment we would head outside, we could be attacked by wild Pokemon. Luckily, he left behind one Pokeball for me to use, which ended up being my saving grace. Why? Because this Sylveon wasn't dangerous at all. It just wanted a good friend. So after calming it down, I threw my Pokeball and got a replacement for my Cyndaquil, which is arguably like 10 times better. With its power, we were able to overpower the rest of the Sylveon Hunter crew, so we could safely make it back to town and challenge the local gym. Inside, we see another weird phenomenon. The professor is talking to the gym leader and asks if the 3 trainers have already taken their gym badges, to which he answers yes they have, and even said that the kid with the Cyndaquil beat him on the first try. So the professor naturally thinks that was me. Turns out this entire scheme was the professor's plan to toughen us up by putting us up against the typing that we're normally weak against. When we call him out on this, Otto, the gym leader, says that this is not the kid with the Cyndaquil, which of course surprises him, so we tell him the entire Sylveon story, which makes him realize that this plan might not have been the best one. However, he's still very excited because now he wants to face me and my Sylveon as the official gym leader of Krista Island. So we accept this challenge, lower down his Venonat's accuracy with my Sylveon's sand attacks, which made it possible for us to avoid most of its moves, and ultimately we clap back with quick attacks and disarming songs, gaining us our first gym badge. We get a couple more rewards like Pokeballs, a Pokedex upgrade, and even a quest log, because Pokemon Elysium does indeed have a ton of side quest content, which I no doubtedly missed a little bit of. Before leaving town, we ask the professor if he knows anything more about this Gray boy, and while I can see in his eyes that he does, he tells me that he doesn't. I also capture one more Krabby before taking the boat to Bluebell City. I start exploring around and immediately find a crime scene, and a lot of people are saying that they found some girl's body. The only other information we get is that she must have been down there for at least 6 months. But this wasn't the only suspicious activity going around the city, because after looking around, we stumbled on some kind of Free Wings meeting. They paint themselves as some kind of group that wants to go against the government, and I immediately recognize their outfits from the one we saw at the beach at the start of our journey. They're here to try and get more recruits for their cause, which I won't be joining for the time being. Once their speech was over, we headed north to a beachy area where we saw another creep harassing a kid by stealing his Pokemon after winning it in a battle, because apparently that was the rule they agreed on. This kid ended up crying and losing his Rattata, so I took revenge by defeating the trainer that defeated him and took his strongest Pokemon Pidgeotto and then gave it to the little kid, making everybody happy except for the stupid creep. On this route, I also captured my next Pokemon Abra and immediately evolved it into Kadabra, which due to his high special attack is always a strong early game team member. I was now confident enough to challenge Gregor, the second gym leader. He would have a bug-type team consisting of Yaman, Betrayal, and Scyther, which would all get chipped down and destroyed by Sylveon's Swifts, Kadabra's Confusions, and Krabby's Vice Grips. As we claim victory, he hands over the Hive badge, and the lady from the crowd stands up and walks over to me. It seems like we've somehow caught her eye with our battle style. While she doesn't even tell me her name, she does need my help at Mount Lonelytop, which is supposed to be somewhere south of here. So as I try to follow in her footsteps, we do end up running into Brendan, who has signed up for a little Pokemon tournament and is kind of destroying the competition with his Pikachu. We tell him that our starter got stolen, and he even offers us to capture a new one, but we tell him that I'm already back on track with the Sylveon we captured. After hearing that, he must realize that we've become pretty strong ourselves and demands a battle. The thing here is that we both have 3 Pokemon. only mine are better, because my Kadabra wins against his Pikachu, Krabby comes out on top against his Croconaw, and Sylveon easily whacks his Turtwig too. Even though he lost, Brendan doesn't let his head hang and hits the road straight to Bryony for his next gym battle. But we of course need to make our pit stop at Mount Lonelytop first with that mysterious woman. But first, we need to talk about this amazing new mobile TCG that somehow feels like an RPG called Brave Frontier Versus. It's a perfect game for those who love fast-paced strategy battles, but with a nostalgic pixel art vibe, which personally always brings me back to the good old days of enjoying life and everything being more simple, and most importantly, away from taxes. So let's get into how it works. You basically build a deck of pixel heroes, each with their unique skills and elemental attributes, kind of like choosing your first Pokemon team. But instead, you'll be doing it for card battles this time. Your fights will last around 5 to 10 minutes, and every move builds energy toward a powerful skill that can completely flip the match. For instance, the Manifestation card. With stronger stats, it allows exciting battle reversals at any moment. You could also duel globally in PvP, host private matches with your friends, or play solo to refine your tactics. And if all of this sounds a little too hard for you, there are also pre-made decks for newcomers that can ease you into the game any way you like. We've also got daily and weekly missions that are packed with rewards. And special rewards are waiting for you when you download and open the app. Plus, the game is also based on the legendary Brave Frontier series, which has over 38 million installs and more than 8,600 characters. But this time, it's faster and simpler. So if you want a TCG that's easy to pick up but hard to put down, check out Brave Frontier Versus right now with the links down below, or you can scan the QR code on screen. A huge thank you to them for sponsoring today's video, and let's get right back into it. On the way over there, it suddenly begins to rain out of nowhere, which is a very weird phenomenon, but I don't really think much about it, but maybe we should've. After the rain stops, we also run into this weird clown weirdo that was dressed up as a tree. It seems like he loves to mess around with people, but not in a fun way. Actually, a very sadistic and dangerous one, as he knocks me out with a mysterious Pokeball filled with gas, and when I wake up again, I'm suddenly stuck on a rock in the middle of the ocean. After screaming for help, we eventually got saved, but I'll definitely be on the lookout for that clown and his stupid smile, because you betcha that we're going to be taking revenge for a stunt like that. The rest of our road was without any hiccups, which allows us to meet up with the mysterious woman in front of Mount Lonelytop. She tells me that her name is Jane, and is surprised to see that it doesn't ring any bells for me, because she is very well known across the entire region. She doesn't tell me her actual job, but says that she's currently working for the government, trying to take down and find out what Free Wings is after, because they have started a suspicious excavating operation that led them to a secret chamber buried deep beneath the mountain. And now it's our turn to find out what they found. And the reason she takes me instead of some other government goon on this operation is because they're looking for good trainers, and I seem to have the potential to become one of those. So together we hike through Mount Lonelytop, pick a sleeping man's nose, and eventually run into a reinforced door that we can't open. However, there's a nearby hole in the floor, but Jane doesn't fit, which is why we go in there alone. Down here we find the mythical Pokemon Philillip, who seems to be guiding us to this very specific color-coded puzzle. On the top here is the sequence you need to follow, and after you walk through every color in the right order, you can get to the other side, which allowed me to open up the door for Jane. As we investigate further, we find drilling machines and find a diary that mentions some kind of beast that's creating tremors here in the mountain. They also mention a masked woman that's incredibly strong, which may refer to Helena, also known as Madame Mask, the vice captain of the Free Wings organization. In Jane's eyes, a terrible woman, so we should definitely investigate further to see what they're up to. Eventually, we find an ancient chamber surrounded by statues that mention something about the Enlightened Men, who are supposed to be the mythical progenitors of the human race, and they inhabited the planet long before us. As we start to investigate the chamber, we feel a darkness looming over us, and eventually we trigger a defense system that sends 2 dark shadow balls our way, and of course the Pokemon inside start to attack us immediately. Together we had to fight through a couple of waves of these, and I even managed to capture a Duskull and Torchic along the way. And at the heart of the chamber, we find a nest that must have belong to the beast Free Wings were after, but it seems to be long gone by now. It's a shame we can't learn more about it, but this entire mission seemed to have impressed Jane and even asks me if we would like to join the Pokemon Rangers, a team of elite trainers that the government of Rhea has assembled, and their goal is to expose Free Wings and their terrible plans to the public, which will eventually hopefully shut them down. For the moment, I'm going to pass up on this opportunity because I want to focus on the gym challenge, which Jane totally understands. The moment she leaves, however, we get some sort of vision where we see the legendary Pokemon Groudon, which is the beast that probably resided here and Free Wings captured. So my next goal was to catch up to Jane as fast as we can so we can tell her about this. So we start sprinting and making our way through the mountain, which evolves our Torchic into a Combuskin. I eventually make it to a rest point where we run into April. My Pokemon are currently still very tired from the journey, while April has already healed up hers. So her shenanigans basically never ends because we're up against her with a disadvantage yet again. Stuff like that doesn't define me though, so I let my Duskull take out her Ralts with a Shadow Sneak, and the following Bayleaf, Spritzee, and Vulpix all get dazzled by my Sylveon's Draining Kisses and Swifts. Even though April is indeed kind of a douchebag, she still admits that we're a really strong trainer and notice that we didn't use our Cyndaquil. This results into me recapping the events yet again, and instead of, showing compassion, she starts to tear me down for losing the professor's Pokemon. But no matter, we ask her if she'd seen Jane, but she hasn't, so I guess we're off to Byrony to get our next gym badge because maybe Jane is there too. After making it to the other side of Mount Lonelytop, we see Otto, the professor's assistant, desperately trying to catch up to us. As he's panting away, he explains that the professor wanted to give me some extra items to help on our journey. It's a device called the Omni Trainer, and it lets you check what Pokemon are on which route, and it also works as a portable PC and Pokeheal system that you need to recharge every time you use it at a local Pokemon Center. After thanking him for giving me this incredibly useful device that I definitely didn't forget to use throughout my entire playthrough, I really want to thank my ADHD for that, but I digress because Jane is in big trouble. She's now surrounded by a ton of Free Wing members as well as their executive, Madame Mask. It's obvious that she can't handle this many people on her own and gets captured. So now it's hero time. We have to save her. I try to follow in their footsteps, but two of their members notice me and try to shut me down, which might have worked if my friend Philillip didn't come along to save the day. We fight them off together and explain to Philillip what happened. With his good heart, he immediately offers to help me and even says that he's spotted Jane and her hostage takers somewhere nearby. So we follow him to Byrony and raid the building together where she's supposed to be held. While Philillip goes on ahead, one of the grunts manages to hold me back, and by the time we beat him, Philillip has already taken down all the other grunts inside of the house and uncovered a secret passageway which we both end up following. When we get to the other side, Philillip stays behind to cover my back from any other incoming grunts so we can make it to the helicopter path safely where Madame Mask was waiting for her escort together with Jane. I shout out that I'm here to rescue Jane, but she says that Madame Mask is way too strong for me to handle. I don't care about anything like that because if we don't try, Jane might be gone forever. And with a disgusting smirk, Mask tells me that if we manage to win, she'll let her go. And if we don't, she takes the both of us to the castle of their leader, Lord Braxis. Luckily for me, she only ended up having one Pokemon, which was Arbok, so my Kadabra's Psybeams, Krabby's Mudshots, and Sylveon's Swifts were able to bail me out and win the battle. So I order her to let Jane go, but Mask doesn't seem to be a man of her word, because she isn't a man at all. She's a woman. Just when they're about to tie me down as well, a Suicune emerges from the forest and scares away the rest of Free Wings. Turns out this is not just any wild Suicune, it's actually Jane's Pokemon. And that's when we learn that Jane doesn't only work for the government, she's also a very strong Elite Four member, and currently ranked as the number 3 trainer in the world. Philillip also seems to be safe and joins our conversation, and with some quick introductions out of the way, we tell Jane that they've captured Groudon. This is terrible news, and Jane needs to go and relay it to the director of the Pokemon Ranger team as fast as she can. So she heads out, awkwardly thank Philillip for his help because we seem to have a little bit of a crush on him, and challenge the local gym leader Leslie, who was specialized in grass-type Pokemon. So I went ahead with Duskull's Nightshades and Kadabra's Psybeams to easily overcome her Lombre, Lilligant, and Roselia. Now that the seed badge was ours, I headed into Owl Forest. And it's a good thing we did, because we saw a little girl being harassed by a group of bug catchers. Their leader was trying to force this girl into becoming his girlfriend. Dude, that's not how relationships start or work. So we step up for this girl, and then this bastard has the audacity to start hitting on me. After telling him that I'm going to crush him where he stands right here right now, he says that he's a top 16 trainer trainer named Zizan, and he then proceeds to say that he can easily crush me with one Pokemon. So I tell him to prove it. That's when he throws out his Ariados, which means our flame-charging Combusken can easily wipe the floor with it. After witnessing this defeat, his entire squad of lackeys leaves him, and now he's all alone, so the only thing he can still resort to is throwing some petty insults at me and then fleeing the scene like a little scaredy cat. I, however, knew he wasn't going to take this lying down, so I prepared myself by capturing a Grovyle, and my suspicions were right because moments after, he ambushed me at the end of the forest. He makes a proposition here. If we beat him, he lets us pass, but if we lose, we become his girlfriend. This guy's just desperate for love, but this ain't the way you're gonna get it. On top of this, he also used an incredibly scummy strategy in our battle by using pinecoes and fortresses and making themselves blow up. Luckily, I was prepared for a strategy like this because I had Duskull on the team who would counter that out, which meant we could safely make it to the lake that was lying beyond the forest. All while praying that we would never see this creep of a bug catcher ever again. At the lake, I start talking to this blonde-haired lady who stated that this lake once belonged to the Great Big Sea, but now it's all alone here. But when I ask a question back, a random fisherman shouts at me that I'm talking to myself. And when I look back, the blonde-haired woman seems to have vanished out of nowhere. Another mysterious event that we don't have answers to. Was this another vision, or was it something else? For now, those questions would remain unanswered. But I need you to answer my question. Are you subscribed yet? Because it not only helps out the channel immensely, it also notifies you for when I upload my next video. And if you have decided to subscribe and even want to go the extra mile to help out the channel even more, you can sign up for our memberships and join the Swamp Squad, which would see you getting shoutouts at the end of videos, and when possible, the Pokemon that I use will also be named after my channel members. With that little intermission out of the way, let's head to Lilia Town, where we meet up with Brendan, who says that there's a big tournament going on, but it's a special kind where you need to team up with 2 other trainers if you want to enter. So he asks me to team up with him and April. Once we arrived at the tournament side, April isn't too happy to see me and would have absolutely preferred to have Philillip on her team. But whether she wants it or not, we're here now, we've signed up, and we're going to try our very best. Our first 2 rounds were easily won by the 3 of us, which immediately led us on to the finals against the cool trainers. But there was a special caveat here. We'd have to choose our best trainer to go up against their best trainer, and the other 2 team members had to give one of their Pokemon to the battler. In the end, me and Brendan decided that I would battle for us, which April hated so much that she didn't even want me to use one of her Pokemon. And if we couldn't do that, we'd be disqualified. In the end, Brendan and me managed to convince her with some harsh words, and after they hand over their Croconaw and Kirlia, our battle against school trainer Rick ended up in a victory for us. As our reward, we would get 10,000 Poké-Dollars and an Eevee, and the 3 of us then head out to Astrancia City because that is indeed where our next gym battle is going to take place. Besides filling out some guy's survey and finding out that we're not a good candidate for his employer, nothing all that noteworthy ended up happening, which meant we would be meeting up with Brendan inside of the city. He says that the gym leader is currently holding a tournament and we might be able to make it in time for the final round where Philillip is supposed to be up against one of the strongest trainers in the region. Naturally, this intrigues the both of us and we head to the gym straight away. But this city is huge, so I got lost a couple of times before I could even find the building, but we were still in time for the final attack where his Houndour was up against a Keldeo. Yeah, I think this tournament might have been rigged because there's just no way Philillip is winning this. Their flamethrowers and water pulses ended up crashing, and of course, Wade, the 5th strongest trainer in the region, ends up coming out on top. While all of his fangirls are surrounding him, we congratulate Philillip on making it this far already, because that's pretty damn cool. Wade also comes over and applauds Philillip for this battle because this was one of the best ones he's had in quite some time. After speaking up against Wade and saying that the fight wasn't really all that fair, he seems to get lost in what I'm saying and awkwardly leaves after saying that he hopes to see us again soon. All of us also got a message from Professor Rama telling us to come to the port. This must be some pretty urgent business, but I wanted to do some sightseeing first. So firstly, I trained up my Krabby to evolve it into Kingler. We also check out a historic building that hosts some of the best trainers' statues so you can learn more about them. Like Enna, the champion, and her Deoxys, whose wax statue is unfortunately not front featured Jane and her Suicune, Rainer and his Raikou, and Yaman with his Entei. Besides these four, Wade is actually the strongest trainer, and the moment we were looking at these statues, I started to dream of being up here one day as well. I also found this fake gym ran by a guy that was obsessed with Meowths, and once we easily beat him up, he goes on to cry and says that this entire thing was just set up to protect the Meowths that live here. A very noble cause, but since there's no gym badge, I don't really care and leave him in his own wallowing. We then finally arrive at the docks and see that Philillip is catching up with his two sisters, Lena and Annie, and the latter one is actually in a wheelchair, which is the main reason he's on his Pokemon League journey. He wants to win the championship so he can get enough money for a surgery that will allow his sister to walk again. So for now, I'll be rooting for Philillip even more than I already was. We also see that our mom is here because the professor has actually set up a cruise for her and all the people here, and after some big motherly love by getting some free goodies, we can find out why Professor Rama called us here. Drunk as usual, he explains that he wants us to join the Ranger team. There's no real reason why, he just thinks Rangers are cool, but I don't believe that reasoning and knock the real truth out of him. He considers himself too old to join the fight against Free Wings, an organization that he himself really hates. So now he hopes that we can take his place as candidates, and we even learned that he's one of the founders of the Rangers team in the first place, together with two other people, Morgana and Drake. All three of them used to be Elite Four members, and they just wanted a dedicated team to keep the region safe. So to say it in a crude way, Drake and Morgana have already retired from the Rangers Institute, and Rama doesn't want to let the team go without a good replacement, which would be us. If we join his cause, he can safely retire and focus on his main passions, drinking and research. So we agreed to his plan because being a Ranger doesn't sound all that bad. Plus we learned that April and Philillip have also signed up already, and the former actually felt pretty surprising to us because April is never about helping people. But her uncle is actually David Hilton, the Rangers director, so we can assume that she always had a passion of becoming a Ranger. Brendan then goes out to find Mr. Hilton. We stay behind for a little longer and ask if the professor knows anything more about Gray. At first he starts lying again, but then we find out that it's actually his one and only son. And the reason that he stole our Pokemon is because he's jealous that his own father didn't give him a starter Pokemon. And I guess because he basically hates his guts. With this information, we can finally leave this conversation with the professor behind, and I even try to challenge Elysium City's gym. However, my Pokemon were severely underleveled compared to hers, which probably means we need to complete some Ranger missions before we're even supposed to get this badge. So in the meantime, we went over to this big mansion where we met up with Jane. And something amazing has happened because Parliament voted against the Free Wings Registration Act. So now their presence across the region will hopefully be reduced. Just as I was telling her that we're about to join up with the Ranger team, Madame Mask and their Lord Braxius walk across the room. Jane tells me that he's supposed to be the second most dangerous man in the world. The first would be his daughter Enna, the most powerful psychic person in the entirety of Rhea. And on top of this, she's also the Pokemon World Champion. Everybody on the outside thinks that Braxius is the boss of the Free Wings, but Jane has faced Enna before and knows how powerful she is. So in her mind, this little girl is pulling the strings behind this entire evil organization. I know it may sound like a crazy theory, but I'm starting to believe her. But let's leave those stones unturned for now and head over to the Ranger HQ where we meet with Mr. Hilton. Jane goes on to say what a wonderful trainer I am and how much I've already helped her. However, all of this doesn't exclude me from taking the Ranger exam, which is still required. For it, we needed to head to the basement where we saw Wade. He's one of the higher ups here at the Ranger HQ as well, and is going to teach me the basics of how the operations here will work. During all of this, however, we can see that April is very jealous that we're getting praise from her uncle, and even goes as far to say that I'm getting special treatment over her and Brendan, who needed to exercise a bit first. Eventually, the director puts her in her place, and we go down to the basement to find Wade. The initiation exam is pretty easy. We need to defeat 4 trainers, which each specialized in a different typing, and once they were all done and dusted, we also defeated Wade and his Pidgeot, which was more than enough to see us become an official Pokemon Ranger. This sees us getting a bike voucher because we need to get across the region as fast as we can as Rangers, and we get all the numbers of the important staff too. Since our exam is finished, we got ordered to come back to Mr. Hilton, who would immediately praise me for passing with flying colors. We also learned that Wade has the 4 swords of justice, or as his fans like to call them, musketeers. Jane even thinks that he could be the trainer to take down Emma and become world champion one day. But we weren't just called in here to glaze Wade, because we got sent on our first mission straight away. But it's a very easy one. We basically get turned into a package deliverer because we need to hand over a Sylph Scope to 2 rangers in Eerie town. April should be waiting for us somewhere because the both of us are going on this mission together. So we head out and go looking for her. While doing so, a couple of pretty interesting things happen, like beating an up-and-coming pop star named Daisy, helping out a little kid that was stuck in a tree because the random clown that we met earlier also put him here, so I'm already on the lookout to take revenge on that guy. And we also added KFC's new menu item, Blaziken, to our party. The rest of the road led us into a swamp where I captured our favorite big boy, Mudkip, and immediately evolved him into Marsh Tom. This swamp eventually led out into Eerie town, but one of the townspeople here says that there's something really weird going on. Everybody that's supposed to live here has basically disappeared without a trace, and we could also not find the rangers we were supposed to meet here. But when I tried to enter the local Pokemon Center, things started to make sense. There seemed to be 2 survivors here, the mayor and Nurse Joy. At first, they didn't want to let me into the building. I tried to explain that I was from the ranger team, but he didn't want to believe me and thought that I was a witch. But I noticed in his voice that this could actually be real, because he was speaking like he was terrified. So I convinced him that I wasn't a witch and that I was just looking for my ranger friends, but he says that some kind of evil witch turned them into prisoners and enslaved them in the Dark Tower. I didn't want anything to happen to the people of this town and went out to save them immediately. But when I was about to reach the Dark Tower, we got ambushed by 4 cultists who locked me up in the basement, and hear this, turned me into a Jigglypuff. So now I finally know what Bill feels like when he turns into that Clefairy. And it's not nice being a Pokemon, and definitely not in this place because it's filled with barriers that hold Pokemon trapped. But people, they can just walk over them. At least that's what the vision of this blonde woman we saw before at the lake was trying to tell me. She, however, is not the witch. She also explains that in order to save everybody, we need to defeat the witch because she was once a nice person and a powerful trainer. But a legendary dark Pokemon called the Wings of Death corrupted her. And if that wasn't enough, we're also standing in a core. These are basically special places filled with cosmic energy. This not only makes Pokemon stronger, but it also enhances psychic powers, which is why the witch was able to lure everybody here and turn them into Pokemon. With this information, the mysterious woman turns me back into a human, which means we're free to take on the trials of the tower. There ended up being 5 of those. Most of the time, you first needed to complete some kind of puzzle, whether it's an invisible maze, a teleport puzzle, or whatever, and then you needed to defeat the chosen sister that the witch had put at the end of the floor. I somehow managed to do this 5 times in a row and climbed my way all the way to the top of the tower. That's where we would stand face to face with the witch herself. When I ask her to return the villagers, she says that there's no villagers here because they're all her sisters and their Pokemon. I call her out on her delusional act and she goes on to say,
"Why does my magic not work on you? Who's protecting you?"
But we technically don't even know that ourselves. But it doesn't matter to the witch because she's just going to try and overpower me in a Pokemon battle instead. She really thought a Banette, Gengar, and Frozlast would be enough to silence me? Yeah, I didn't think so either. First, Kadabra destroyed her Banette with Psybeams, and from there on out, Blaziken could just fiery kick the rest of it. After she's defeated, the darkness that was surrounding this place seems to have vanished. And we learn that the witch's name is actually Morgana, one of the Rangers' founders and former Elite Four member. So I ask her why she did all of these evil things, because she's supposed to be a very kind and great person. Turns out she was indeed somehow being controlled by the Wings of Death, but it was still her. The person we just battled was just filled with only the darkest parts of herself. So this dark dragon wasn't the only one to blame, because everybody has a dark side. She just didn't have the strength to resist it. With this knowledge, she hands me a special magical pendant, which we're supposed to use to reverse the spell she put the villagers under. And as for her, well, she's going to atone for her sins by going to a special solitary place. Morgana then walks off and we free everybody that's still in here, even April and the rest of the Rangers. Now that this entire town was saved, we picked up a small reward from the mayor and get called by a random number that wants us to go to Lady Sheila. But before we could even go to her, I did get sidetracked a little, because at one point I reached the current mines, where I found an entire group of miners stuck behind some kind of barrier that was created by that stupid clown that keeps messing with everybody. And these aren't jokes anymore, because these people have been stuck here for a very long time and are on the brink of starvation. So we have to stop this guy before things start to get out of hand. And we end up finding his evil lair, or should I say clown show, pretty nearby. The place is not only filled with very annoying puzzles, but also a ton of his goons that do indeed also dress up as clowns. With a lot of trial and error, we could eventually reach him in the middle of the room, and he seems to be totally aware of what he's doing here, even laughing at the thought of those people never being able to get out ever again. This clown prince is really nothing but an insane maniac. But even though he was good at trapping people, that didn't mean he was good at battling Pokemon, which I found out sooner rather than later, with Blaziken and Sceptile basically slashing through his entire team. Even though he is a scumbag though, he still is a man of his word and hands me the keys to save those miners. But he still vanishes into nothingness with a smoke bomb. Once we free all of those miners, we can move on with our main quest, which was meeting up with this mysterious Lady Sheila. She lived in this beautiful palace and is supposed to be one of the strongest psychics in the world. She knows that we've managed to free the entirety of Eerie Town, and also thinks that it's really admirable that someone like me with no psychic powers could take down Morgana the witch. She's been reading my mind this entire time and knows about the girl in the white dress that's been helping me out, and is willing to uncover this mystery together with me if we solve one of her problems first. It's pretty easy, she just wants me to get back one of her psychics that has gone missing. So after a little scavenger hunt, we managed to find her, send her back here, and Sheila then orders me to go to a place called the Springs of Dream, which is where we're supposed to find out who this girl really is. So we sprint over there, step inside of the spring, and start bathing with our eyes closed. This somehow shows me a flashback of a lab where the girl seems to be working on some kind of project with Regigigas. So now we know that the reason she dresses in white is because she's actually a scientist, or at least used to be. We then return to Lady Sheila with this newfound information, and after Sheila looks inside of my mind, she can also then read the minds of the scientists that were in that room. And that's how we found out that this entire event happened years ago, almost a century back actually. But unfortunately, we can't find out what kind of experiments they were doing on Regigigas. But something felt incredibly off when Sheila saw this entire image. The only thing she knows is that there's something big behind this story, and eventually we will discover the meaning of all of this, but she cannot help me with that. And our conversation ends with this.
When the time comes, Zwiggo, don't be afraid to change the world.
Words that would ring through my mind in the upcoming days, but I wasn't really sure what they meant. So I distracted myself with more urgent matters, like finally taking on Ilaria, the 4th and electric type gym leader. We were still severely underleveled, don't get me wrong, but with the power of Sceptile's energy balls and Blaziken's big speed boost with Flame Charge, Lantern, Manectric, Heliolisk, and Ampharos would eventually be defeated, so that I could claim my Zap badge and regrouped with Wade for our next ranger mission, where we had to raid an abandoned factory because apparently Free Wings raided this place and we needed to find out what they wanted from it. But from the moment we step foot inside of this building, Wade straight up runs into a trap, trapping him inside of a tiny room, so now we somehow have to get him out by messing with a power generator that's located somewhere else in the building. But being the nice guy that Wade is, he is going to give me his Keldeo so that clearing out this place from any other opponents or traps would become way easier. And to help me out even more, I also captured an Electabuzz along the way. As I was making my way through the factory, we kept on running into the same shady guy. Each time I would call out to him, but he would just run away. He eventually stops running away and tells me that his name is Finn and that we should run because Free Wings apparently left some kind of hunter here that is supposed to guard this place. But what's even weirder is that Finn doesn't even know if that hunter is still a real man. But to try and hold me back of finding out what's happening here, he goes on to battle me. But he was shocked with how strong we were, and in a matter of seconds, we already overpowered him. After this defeat, he tells me that the hunter is actually a Pokemon exterminator, whether it being trainers or actual wild ones, so we order him to leave the premises so we can deal with this in our own time. And just as I'm about to reach the generator, everything goes black, and this dark and shady figure that must be the hunter suddenly stands behind me. It's got an empty look in its eyes, almost like it isn't even alive. Combine this with the menacing clothes, and you you've got quite an uncomfortable situation. But this wasn't going to affect my battling abilities, as we easily destroyed his Might Iena, Venomoth, and Dusknoir with the help of Blaziken, Sceptile, and Keldeo. Upon its defeat, it doesn't even say anything and straight up vanishes the way it came. Very mysterious, but we have to save Wade now. We can't chase this ghost of a man, so I start messing with the generator and boom, my friend is freed. While I was exploring here, I also got a couple of diary entries from a ton of computers. So we end up uploading those to Wade's phone as well to find out what they were doing here. And it's pretty damn bad, because they were working on a mega terraforming machine. It can completely alter the form and shape of a location's surface, and it absorbs Pokemon's energy to use as its power. I don't think I have to tell you why this machine is not only terrible in the wrong hands, but would also be morally questionable in the right ones. But the people who tested this machine said that it was a failure, because they used over 20 Pikachus, which allowed them to only transform 1 square meter. So even with the most powerful Pokemon in the world, it probably wouldn't do that much. But if Free Wings can somehow update this machine, stuff can get really bad for the region, and maybe even the entire world. So me and Wade take this information to the director, which makes all of us realize that's the exact reason why they captured Groudon, because they're going to try and use its power to power the machine. So in order to find out more about what they're trying to do, the director suggests that we infiltrate their HQ, which is always heavily guarded, but there is a secret passageway through the sewers of Astrancia. The problem is that none of us know where this secret passage is, but the underground mafia king Rufus that runs the entire black market might know of a way. So me and Jane sign up for this mission and crawl into humanity's toilet. The moment we set foot into the underground city, we immediately get scanned by a guy that's trying to sell me a Scyther, which turned out to be just a Magikarp. I know, the oldest trick in the book, but I just trust people too easily, okay? I'll make sure not to buy any more Pokemon from shady people anymore. Speaking of shady people, look who we run into. Gray, the guy who stole my Cyndaquil. Seems like he got himself into trouble with some kind of biker gang, but I wasn't here to save the day. I wanted to confront him for stealing my Pokemon. Unfortunately, the biker guys got agitated on me, which allowed him to escape. So once I whooped their butts, I tried to follow him and eventually cornered him. The first thing he does is actually thank me for saving him from those bikers, but I don't care about that. I want to know why he stole my starter. He goes on to tell me that he should have had that Pokemon in the first place and that they're even best friends now. He also mentions that his dad, Professor Rama, dumped his mother some months before he was born, and ever since the professor moved to Krista Island, he's been keeping an eye on him. He was really jealous of the amount of love me, April, and Brendan received, and I guess that eventually got to him, which led to him stealing my Pokemon. After I call him pathetic, he seems to get very agitated, and this sparks a battle between the both of us. He had a very decent team with Haunter, Shiftry, Gyarados, and Typhlosion, but it was nothing compared to what I had to offer. With Kadabra overpowering his Haunter, Blaziken winning against Shiftry, Sceptile blasting his Gyarados, and in the end we showed him that we picked up the right fire starter along our own journey as Blaziken kicked his Typhlosion to the curb. After this defeat, he realizes that he shouldn't be mad at me and even apologizes for stealing Cyndaquil. I know, big character development. But the moment I tell him that his father actually wants to speak to him, he runs off because he doesn't want to face the man that abandoned him so many years ago. We don't chase him down and instead run into another tournament where Philillip loses in the final against a guy named Virgil. 2 tournament final losses in a row is clearly getting to his mental, so I try to tell him that he should slow down a bit. And while he promises to do so, he also tells me a little bit about the Underground King and mentions that he's one of the biggest douchebags on Earth, and that we should watch out in his presence. And so eventually me and Jane reach his evil office. And Rufus of course doesn't want to help us out without him gaining something too. On top of this, Free Wings have also offered him the legendary Pokemon Rayquaza if he keeps the government business out of their HQ. This means they've probably managed to capture Rayquaza as well, meaning that if they have 2 legendary Pokemon, the terraforming machine might actually work. Getting to the HQ is now the most crucial thing we can do before anything goes wrong. So Jane proposes something. He will get her Suicune if he can beat me in a Pokemon battle. Rufus thinks this is some kind of trick because why would he ever lose to a little girl like me, but Jane seems to fully trust me. But if I manage to beat him, he needs to give us the secret passage location to get to the HQ. This deal turned out to be perfect because he only had 3 poison-type Pokemon. All 3 got destroyed by my 1 Kadabra Psychic. Of course, after this defeat, Rufus is bitten in the ass and doesn't really want to give us the location, but Jane makes him realize that this makes him look weak. So he tells his new assistant Finn, the guy we just met at the old factory, to give us the location. location. And after carefully following his instructions, we do indeed end up in the Free Wings headquarters. Me and Jane of course get ambushed by a few grunts and hunters, but with both of our strengths combined, they become pretty trivial to defeat. They made my Marshtomp gain so much experience that I got my favorite Pokemon Swampert on the squad as well, so now we're basically unstoppable. Jane then searches their computer system and tells me to look around for any more clues. And after I entered the top floor, something really weird caught my eye. An entire room filled with Pokemon dolls that seem to just be sitting at a table. The moment I ask myself what they're doing here, a little girl instant transmissions next to me and mentions that they are her friends. I somehow recognize this little girl from a dream I had, and that's when we learn that this is actually Enna, the champion and Lord Braxis' daughter. But since she's a very strong psychic, I'm actually speaking to a projection of herself. Her physical body is somewhere else. And soon, we will join her there too. Whatever that may mean. For one reason or another, she also tells me and the Rangers to go to Ghost Island because that's where Team Free Wings is going to strike next. All of this starts to look like a trap, but I don't really have any other choice. But just as I was about to tell Jane, Enna vanishes and the dolls start to attack me. Once they're easily defeated, we also analyze a little Cubone that's resting in a bed nearby. It seems to be totally detached from reality, almost like it isn't even alive. And it also has a very weird name, Metastasia, which we can read off of a name tag. And after touching the strange device that's right next to him, we suddenly get a vision where we saw a silhouette of a tall mountain and also felt a sudden surge of anticipation. So now I'm starting to think that this device is somehow keeping this Cubone away from our reality. With all of these newfound mysteries, we head downstairs and talk to Jane, but she's already found out that they're going to attack Krista Island with the terraforming machine, so we head back to HQ, notify everybody that needs to know. Jane also explains that they've captured the legendary Pokemon Kyogre, which is the one they're going to use to power the terraforming machine. But it alone should never have enough power to both sink Ghost and Krista Island into the sea, so they must be boosting it up somehow. So Jane mentions that Ghost Island is supposed to be cursed and works as a core. We of course already learned that this is a place where Pokemon and psychic powers get boosted, so all of this checks out. So we not only need to evacuate everybody on Krista Island, we also need to notify the Coast Guard and head out with the rest of the Rangers to try and stop this. Determined to save our hometown, all of us head out, and I also strengthened my ranks by both evolving Kadabra and Electabuzz. We then sailed out to Ghost Island, where they've already managed to secure the coast. Wade, Jane, and Philip have already led their ranger teams deeper into the island, but before we join them, Mr. Hilton wants to see me so he can give me some orders. Our first mission is to defeat some Free Wings agents that have managed to sneak behind our lines, which has blocked some of our teams off of getting back to the beach. Something like this was cookie batter for me, as I didn't even take more than 10 minutes to clear all of them out. So we return back to the director, who has a suspicion that there's a spy somewhere among our ranks. So we find him, get him out of here ASAP, and join Brendan's crew to find out what's happening with the rest of our teams. We battle our way through the island and eventually get to Wade, who has run into a big issue. The way forward is blocked off by a gate, and this gate can only be turned off with 4 keys. Luckily, those were guarded by pretty weak grunts, so I beat all of them up, grabbed those keys, put them in a laptop, and shut down the power, which opened up the gate. We could then move along and storm into this ancient-looking cave, which had a very weird vibe. I'm talking special markings on the walls, and an eerie fog that was engulfing some of the areas here too. At one point, I even fell inside of a dark hole here, and then I got attacked by this strange skeleton that is supposed to be a banished man. They seem to be all over the place, attacking our rangers and halting our progress. But I didn't let that faze me and kept on pushing forward until we would run into another hunter who would actually speak for once. But not really, because this was just Enna speaking through him. You see, hunters are vessels, empty human shells programmed only to follow orders and battle enemies. And the reason she's able to do this is because Ghost Island boosts her power. On top of this, her Deoxys' power is also boosted and basically gets the same traits as her. And if we want to face her one day, we'll have to beat this hunter first. So we show her that I'm not to be messed with and easily defeat him. We then demand answers. Why is she doing this? She then goes on to explain that this entire place we're in right now is not a tomb. It's a purgatory. Several millennia ago, the people who lived here, the banished men, did something terrible. But they were once good psychic people that had cosmic energy to maintain balance in nature. However, a section of them sought to understand and use dark powers. More specifically, the power of death. Unfortunately for them, the rest of their kin realized what was going on and then proceeded to exile them, strip them of their powers, and banish them over here. So in the end, it's not about destroying Krista at all. It's about re-entering that age of the banished men and trying to get control over the power of death. After I say that I will stop everything going on here, she says that I will try, but will be too late. After this, she vanishes, and I don't listen to the words she said, and I keep pushing onward. Along the way, we heard terrible roars and earthquakes, and teamed up with April and some other rangers to reach the main core's temple. Inside, we also meet up with Brendan and his team, who have managed to trap a ton of banished men inside of a big hole. Only these banished men are not using Pokemon, but swords, making them way more dangerous than we initially thought. Me and April then try to run to a ladder to head upstairs as fast as we can to stop the shenanigans, and even though she already got up there, an earthquake knocks down the ladder, meaning that we have to take the long way round. Here we see tons of our ranger friends fighting the banished men, giving us an easier time to make it through, but eventually our luck runs out when we run into General Stenix and two of his hunters. He says that they're going to change the world for the better by ruling it with an iron fist. So they're not only criminals, they're also psychopaths. I tell him to get out of the way, but he obviously refuses, so like usual, we destroy him in a Pokemon battle, get past him, and get stopped by their second general, Madame Mosk. She was about to hold me up as well, but April and Brendan came at just the right time, distracting her so we could get through and deeper into the Ghost Island core. This is where we run into Jane, Wade, and Philillip. I immediately noticed that Philillip is actually injured and bleeding. This was the result of him getting attacked by a banished man with a sword. I offered to bring him back to a medical crew, but in that moment, Enna phases into the room, forcing the three of my friends to battle her while we push on to try and stop this terraforming machine from doing his job. And we came just in time because Lord Braxius has just given the order to turn on the machine. As I step up, he immediately starts to ridicule me for being a little girl, but I don't care and tell him to stop this madness before he destroys not only this entire island but also the entire region. He doesn't seem to care at all if anybody here or on Krista Island gets killed because they will be worthy sacrifices to his new government. I quickly realize that there's no talking to this guy, so I walk up to Kyogre and defeat it with the combined powers of Alakazam, Sceptile, Electivire, and Swampert. Upon its defeat, it seems like Kyogre has lost its power, which means the machine is not going to work. But I wasn't able to stick around to find out because we need to go and save our friends. But things aren't swinging our way because Enna has just defeated all three of our boys with her Deoxys' Psycho Boost. And after this, it's my turn to try and face her. But something seemed off here. Her Deoxys was incredibly weak and easily defeated by my team, but this was all part of Enna's plan. She deliberately weakened Deoxys so that it could transfer its true power back into Kyogre, so I try to run back to stop the terraforming machine again, but this time I am indeed too late. A terrible storm brews across the skies, and with the sea going absolutely wild, everything sinks straight to the bottom of the ocean. As I was trying to get away, I suddenly fainted at one point, but luckily my friends were able to find me and the remaining ones gathered together at the beach when I woke up. The clear first question I ask is my mom okay? To which they answer, yes, she has been placed with the rest of the survivors inside of a building in Blueport Bay. Brendan and April haven't been seen yet, but Philillip has already left for Bluebell. Enna, Braxius, and some of their other goons also managed to escape, and this caused Wade to lose his cool a little. So instead of searching for more survivors around the island, Jane orders him to fly me to Blueport Bay so we can meet our mom. Once he drops me off, I tell Wade that everything is going to be okay, and he then heads back to help out Jane. I then join up with the professor, my mother, and the rest of the evacuees, and this is when we learn that they couldn't evacuate all the residents at once, even though the island is already 87% underwater. And among the people that haven't returned yet are Philipp's sisters, so he has gone out in search of them. The professor never would have imagined that a machine like the MTM would have caused such devastation, but how does he even know that the MTM exists? Because we never told him him about it. At this moment, there was no time to question him about this because I wanted to go and help out Philillip to get the rest of the survivors back. Luckily, the professor helps me with this by giving me the HM for Surf, which allowed me to save an entire group of people that were being harassed by a horde of tentacruels. I asked the officer that was with them if they had seen Philillip, which is when we hear some very unfortunate news. He was never able to find his sisters, and after hours of searching, he flew off to some unknown location. But the officer spotted something else that was pretty damn weird. First, he heard a terrible cry coming from the sky, and then he saw a big shadow up there. It was heading to where Crystal Island was supposed to be, so we need to be careful when we go there ourselves. After thanking the officer for his information, we go out in search of Philillip and end up finding him standing on top of a rock looking out at the ocean, exactly to the spot where his house once used to be. I try to ask him if he's okay, but he just screams out that Lena and Annie are dead. Both of his sisters, the ones he started this journey for, no, the ones he was living for, are no longer here. His entire world basically just got destroyed in an instant. And of course, this makes him go off the rails, as he starts to blame Braxius and Freewings for their deaths. He's going to make them pay for what they've done. I try to calm him down by saying that this is not the right solution, but in a fit of anger, he attacks me, which is something that he would normally never do. Luckily, because of his anger, he wasn't playing with the right mindset, which allowed me to overpower him, and while this makes him realize that he shouldn't take his anger out on me, he still seems to be in this trance of getting revenge on Freewings. I tell him that we're going to find them and make them rot in prison, but that isn't enough for him. He wants to kill them like they killed his sisters. This is something our friend would normally never say, and that makes me think of the Pokemon we faced back in the Dark Tower in Eerie Town, the Wings of Death, which amplifies a person's negative emotions. This, combined with the story of the officer of this weird scream and a Pokemon flying in the sky, makes me able to put all the puzzle pieces together. And in that moment, the Wings of Death strikes me down from behind. And the next moment I remember is me waking up inside of a hospital bed with Mom sitting by my side. Turns out I've been sleeping for 4 full days. Philillip ended up bringing me here, which clearly means he still cares about me, but Mom also tells me that Professor Rama wants to talk to me. He confirms that Philipp's sisters have indeed been found dead, and the reason they couldn't get evacuated was because Annie's disability held them back. How terrible for Philillip. This probably makes him feel like it's his fault, because he was going to try and get enough money to get rid of that disability, or at least help her with it. But then the professor drops a truth bomb. It's all his fault, because he's the creator of the Mega Terraforming Machine. He made it because he used to be the head of Sylph's engineering unit. But I sort of knew this already from the comment he made last time we talked. I try to ease his burden by saying that it's not his fault because Braxius, Enna, and Freewings used the machine, not him. So we have to stop them before they commit more war crimes. And the professor might have an idea how to, because there is a way to turn off the machine remotely. But the device that can do this is with his old aide, Professor Matkins. But he lives in a different continent, Savan. So now we have to go there, grab that device, and bring it back here. Before we leave, I ask about all of my friends, and it's nice to hear that all of them are safe. Wait even brought me flowers. Plus, the professor also ends up giving me a ferry ticket so we can get to Savan in the first place. And even though the championship doesn't really matter anymore, the professor also urges me to go and take on the local gym leader there. In the meantime, the professor is going to make a new lab in Azure City, and my mom has enough savings to join him there too. With our next goal being clear as day, we get led into Chapter 2. Now that we've made a full recovery, I make a quick pit stop at the local Rangers HQ. Here, Jane informs me that the entire Ghost Island has sunken to the bottom of the sea, and while a couple of Rangers were lost, all of the banished men were also gone with it. So Freewings will have to find another core if they want to activate the machine again. And they've already found out where this core is exactly. They also know that the task that the professor has put on me is very important, so for the time being, they will no longer require our services and deal with that problem themselves. After that, we go and talk to Wade, who seemed to be very worried about the specific Pokemon that attacked me. And so we tell him that it was probably the Wings of Death, which turns out to be the arch enemy of his Swords of Justice. He's even spent the last 2 years of his life trying to track that dragon so he and his boys could slay it. So if you ever hear anything else about this dragon, we have to let him know. Otherwise, it's just going to cause more chaos and pain everywhere it goes. With that out of the way, we start heading to the port so we can board the ship, but run into Brent Brendan along the way. Even though he lost his home, he's just glad to see that we're okay, and is also very worried about Philillip because he hasn't seen him ever since that day that we got struck down. But we both have big tasks ahead of us, so we can't be glooming over what had happened because we need to look to the future. And to see if we're prepared for this future, we decide to have a friendly battle here. With our Swampert, Sceptile, and Blaziken, we overcome his Flareon, Torterra, Raichu, and Feraligatr and say goodbye because we won't be seeing each other for the time being. I immediately board the SGN and meet a very intriguing old gentleman. His name is Simon and he used to be a psychic and can clearly see that there's something wrong with me. And he wants to play a game with me to try and cheer me up, which I immediately agree to because the trip is going to be quite long. He's going to give me some kind of riddle about a passenger on the boat. I then need to go look for that passenger, and if I pick the right one, we battle them. And each time we get it wrong, we have to give him 10 bucks, so this is a really fun game to pass the time. And as you may have expected, we do indeed get all 5 passengers right and defeat them in our battles, with our last one actually being against them as we beat up his Mr. Mime and Hypno. But once it was over, something terrible happened. Pirates had taken over the ship and demand that everybody hands over their Pokemon, and if they don't, they're going to regret it. The little hero spirit in me immediately sprung into action as I faced off against both pirates and defeated them. This makes them so scared that they retreat and stop their attack on our boat. And now that everybody was safe, we would arrive in Port Arcasia without any more problems. I stood on business and immediately started searching for the professor's lab and ran into this mysterious pink-haired man that was being followed by a camera crew. He didn't say anything to me and just grabbed my hat, signed it, and then left. This made me wonder if he was some kind of celebrity. After these events, I found the professor's lab, who was actually initiating 3 young trainers by giving them their starter Pokemon and letting them go out on their own journeys. One of the kids, named Lily, even stopped by my side and demanded a Pokemon battle. I tried to tell her that I already had 4 gym badges and that she would easily be defeated. However, she didn't really care and just wanted some experience, which reminded me quite a lot of myself because I did the exact same thing with Philillip when we started out. So we go on to teach her the same lesson we learned and explain to Dr. Matkins what happened. Here we learned that he was always against the machine and that he even told Rama multiple times to stop working on it. But we tell him there is no use in crying over spilled milk because, like always, the time to act is now. And so we ask for the device that can turn off the machine, but he has hidden it in a very safe spot. So while he goes on to grab it, we can take on the local gym leader to kill some time. And when I enter this gym, we see the leader, Croco Rocco, and Rainer, the 4th best trainer in the entire world, talking about some kind of fossil called the Old Amber. They plan to revive this fossil and use the Pokemon inside to win the championships. When we step in and ask for a gym battle, however, Croco Rocco gets incredibly defensive and even laughs at the fact that we've lost our own home. This of course gets me all fired up, and I promise him that his fat ass is going to get beaten right here, right now. Of course, I keep my promise as Sceptile uses his energy balls to crack all of his Pokemon's balls. And even when he's ultimately defeated, he refuses to give me the gym badge because I'm from a different continent. I know, this guy is straight up a racist asshead, but we know he's looking for a fossil somewhere in the desert. So all we have to do is just find that fossil before him, and then he will be forced to give me that gym badge. In my search for the fossil, a couple of nice things happened, like capturing an Altaria and finding out that that weird pink-haired looking guy is actually named Captain Orchid. He seems to be a pretty big deal here on the island because quite a few people came here to watch one of his speeches. But when I started to actually listen what he was rambling on about, we heard that it was full of lies. Like he claims to have defeated the world champion Enna, and even says that he defeated the legendary Pokemon Rayquaza, which is just not true. So we call him out on his bullshit and make sure everybody here in this room knows that everything he's saying is a straight up lie. This naturally gets him very agitated, but he doesn't confront me. Instead, he runs away. And this was also the last thing I saw of this pathetic, fake hoggling liar. After this, we would join a fossil expedition with about 1 million other people that were looking for the fossil until we would stumble upon an ancient temple that was being blocked off by Croco Rocco's goons. But I still managed to find a way inside by dropping down into a quicksand pit. In here, we found weird cave paintings of an ancient looking fish, and somehow after exploring even more, we run into one of the Aqua Pirates. They're also after the Old Amber and will do anything to get it, even kill Croco Rocco. After hearing this, I know we have to try and save him even though he's an asshole. But Mr. Carr here, the second in command of the Aqua Pirates, isn't just going to let me pass. Luckily, he only has water types on his team, which meant Electivire could shock all of them, which forced him out of the way, so he had to go and tell his boss. And we immediately follow in his footsteps, but it's already too late. Oriana, their leader, has already found the old Amber and even trapped Rocco and his team in some kind of hole. I try to keep my distance so I can overhear what they're planning, and I find out that they're going to resurrect this Aerodactyl to hunt down the Guardian of the Seas, whoever that may be. At first I thought it could be Kyogre, but he's already in the hands of Free Wings, so it must be some other kind of legendary Pokemon. The Aqua Pirates then leave the entire crew to rot in that hole, and that's when I come in to talk to Croco Roco. I promise to help them out of this predicament if he gives me the gym badge. He really had no reason to disagree anymore other than his pride. He ends up agreeing and we help them out. With this entire storyline wrapped up, I went back to the professor to see if he had found that device. And absolutely not. He's getting kidnapped by the Aqua Pirates. I try to chase them down, but they're too fast with their boat, and by the time I get to the next island, we also get stopped by the police. The reason why? To stop the Aqua Pirates to go to their filthy city. So I tell them that the Aqua Pirates always do everything by sea. Putting up land blockades isn't going to stop them, but this dense-headed police officer just believed his own thoughts and even threatens me with jail time if we don't leave right now. Luckily, an old grandma named Martha takes me away to her home to calm down. She also asked me what I've been through, so I told my entire story up until this point, and at the end of it, she gives me some great advice that keeps me going and eventually even calms me down. And she then sends me back into the wild world with a nice glass of tea. But when I go back to the police officer, he mentions that there was never a granny there, and the house that we were sitting in was also not real. It used to be there a couple of years ago, which made me realize that we probably got calmed down by an actual spirit. A very welcoming phenomenon, because now our mind is clear and we can head over to Alabasta City, or as everybody else likes to call it, the town of crime. We quickly found out why, because when I wanted to enter, we got stopped by one of the Aqua Pirates who demanded that I'd pay a fee in order to get in. So we promptly put him in his place with a Pokemon battle and got in that way. The moment you step foot into this town, you start seeing crazy stuff. People are beating each other up in the streets, stealing from each other's houses, and the same guy that scammed me in the underground city tried to sell me a Scyther again, so I called him out on it, which prompted him to leave me alone so I could check out the rest of the city. There was a gym here, but this one was also guarded by the Aqua Pirates, and the leader wasn't even around because it was their boss. But to the east, you also had the Pirate Woods, which led into a special arena. It belongs to Lady Mouse, and she always holds tournaments here. But it's actually really special because you go in with 2 of the following 6 Pokemon: Umbreon, Kangaskhan, Tropius, Pelipper, Sandslash, and Heliolisk. Why? Because those were the Pokemon of a legendary pirate named Lady Booty, and this entire competition in arena is dedicated to her. Besides this, you also can't bring any healing items inside, making the challenge quite a lot harder. So I head into the Pirate Woods, capture a Tropius and a Pelipper, and sign up for the tourney that is basically set up as an entire victory road. Inside, you battle trainers that have also picked out of the 6 Pokemon, but you can't play very risky because some of them even have 3 or 4 Pokemon, which is way more than your 2. However, each time you defeat a trainer, you get some currency, which you can then exchange at a Pokemon Mart, which are located in various spots inside. Because you're only limited to 2 Pokemon, your PP can run out fast as well as your HP, so spend your points wisely. I was able to do this with a few struggles along the way and eventually reach the leader Yana, who would have a Pelipper and an Umbreon. So I just spam Hurricane, Roost, and Hydro Pump with my own Pelipper to keep him healthy and deal heavy amounts of damage so that she would be defeated and we would be crowned the new champion of the arena. And finally, we end off in front of Lady Booty's statue with Lady Mouse. She congratulates me for winning and actually tells me that the final trainer was also her daughter. She's supposed to take over the arena when she finally retires, but that could be a couple of years from now. So for now, I'll be picking up my reward, which ended up being a shiny Milotic, meaning that we could leave this place behind and head back to Alabasta. Hebrew would check out the local bar where I'd see Croco Roco and his entire crew sitting at a table. I went over and asked if they'd seen the Aqua Pirates because they had kidnapped the professor, and he knows where they are and is even thinking of a plan to try and get them back. However, a lot of Aqua Goons have been keeping an eye on them, so they need to be quiet. But they aren't really keeping tabs on me. So I ask him where they could be, and he says that they've taken them to Amira Volcano. That's where she's going to revive the Aerodactyl fossil, try and summon the Guardian of the Seas. And the reason why she took Professor Matkins is because he specializes in resurrecting fossils. And in return for all of this his information, Krokoroko wants me to bring the old amber to him once we're finished. A pretty good deal if you ask me. So we follow the Aqua Pirates by boat and eventually end up in the Petra Isle. On the way, we found out a couple of things, like the people from Neko Island who were being suppressed by some kind of ambassador. He seemed to command the Aqua Pirates and told them to steal all of their food and made their lives miserable. Luckily, me and Mr. Simon, the guy from the boat, are here to save the day. I also found out that the Aqua Pirates put a bounty on my head, so now I've got a billion bounty hunters on my ass as well. But no matter, we still have to keep on going, so we meet up with Simon inside of Neko, and our first course of action is finding out more information about that black-dressed ambassador that's been terrorizing this place. So we head over to the mayor, who runs the local game corner, and save him from one of the pirates that was attacking him. He tells me that the ambassador actually put the bounty on my head and is not actually with the Aqua Pirates because she's a foreigner just like me. And if we want to confront her, we need to go to the lighthouse north of here. Before going there, I checked out the docks and saw some Free Wings agents, meaning that this has something to do with them as well. Why would she put a bounty on my head otherwise? So I go back to Mr. Simon and explain everything. This makes him think that we're walking straight into a trap just for me. But trap or not, we don't really have a choice. These people need to be helped out and we need to find out who this person is and why she's after me. So this is our plan of action. Simon will be waiting outside in case it's a trap. He also hands me a Strelitzia bracelet, but it has a very special property. It changes from yellow to red when it comes in contact with adrenaline. So if I would feel fear, the bracelet will change colors. For now, I didn't really know what the purpose for this will be, but I thank Simon for his gift and stormed into the lighthouse all by myself. But the moment we stand face to face with her, I don't really recognize her. And that's when she confirms my thoughts by saying that we have indeed never met, meaning that she's a psychic. She goes on to say that I caused some kind of ripple and wants what I was given here on my journey. She also mentions that I'm just an ordinary girl, yet her master thinks I might be a big threat. Nonetheless, she's going to take that item from me, to which I answered that I'm never going to give it to her, but according to her, it's already too late, and that's when we get sent into this kind of dream dimension. I don't really know how to describe it, but we were certainly in a cemetery. As we start to walk around, we see sudden flashes of our friend Philillip and Mr. Simon, but when we enter the tomb in the middle, something very eerie starts to come over me. There's a portrait hanging above the grave, but it's all smudged out, but I get the feeling that I know this person. And the moment I leave, we see whose grave this really is. My own. This twisted version of me then says that I will end up dead if I keep going at this path, and she even goes on to say that we are fighting for the wrong side and that Enna will save the world one day. But to me, this all feels like psychological manipulation, so I snap out of it and face this wrong version of myself in a one-on-one battle. I immediately realized that this wasn't actually me because she didn't even use the same team as I had, and once we come out on top, she vanishes, which made me realize that all of this was indeed just a lie. My bracelet then changed color when I was in the right position, and the moment I picked up a red-looking flower, we got transported back to my own reality. We meet back up with Mr. Simon, tell him what happened, and search our bag for the item this mysterious woman might have stolen from me, and realize that it's the tea that old ghost lady handed over to me. This makes Mr. Simon realize that we have no time to lose, so he doesn't really explain anything and tells me to come to Phitopia Isle as fast as we can. Here we board a boat together that's infested with Free Wings agents, but once we beat some of them up, they give us the location of the ambassador's quarters. Inside, we find a strange portal that is supposed to lead us to the ambassador, so both me and Simon step through. And he mentions that we need to catch her before she delivers the tea to her master. But when we're on the other side, everything shifts and changes because we're suddenly inside of a dragon sanctuary that's incredibly cold inside of the mountain tops. After following the mountainside, we eventually run into a really tall tower. Inside, we see Mr. Simon, Brendan, and April going through different doors, and I realize that my friends are just an illusionary distraction here, so I follow Mr. Simon and climb all the way to the top of this tower. And this is where things start to get real mindfucky, but I'm gonna try and explain. This entire portal journey was an illusion, created by none other than the Master of Time, Celebi, which disguised itself as Mr. Simon to help me out. However, this vision of Brendan and April was actually real. They were here 2 days ago to stop Free Wings and their master from capturing Rayquaza, the Master of the Skies, on top of this sky pillar here. Because the sky pillar is a core, which is why Free Wings was so interested in it in the first place. Once we learn all of this, the ambassador finally drops her masks and reveals that it's actually just a hunter being controlled by Enna. And once we were able to defeat it in a Pokemon battle, it ran off and dropped the tea for us to pick up again. I try to ask Celebi exactly what we needed to do with this tea and why it was so important, it doesn't give me any answers and straight up sends me back to the present. I guess that's a mystery we'll have to solve later, because now we need to go and face the professor by heading into Amira Volcano. On the very top, we see Oriana threatening the professor to revive this fossil as fast as he can, otherwise he'll throw his wife inside of the volcano. And of course, I try to step in to stop all of this, but their leader Oriana holds me off with a Pokemon battle. And this is where every Aqua Pirate's weakness shows itself yet again. They only use water types. And when you have an incredibly strong Electivire like mine, it becomes trivial to take them down as you just spam Thunderbolts turn after turn after turn. This would see me walk away with another victory, but it's already too late. The professor revives the fossil, but we're all shocked to see that it's not an Aerodactyl, but instead a very old ancient fish called Relicanth. This made Oriana incredibly mad, and then she hilariously kicks the Relicanth into the sea. However, it seems like this plan actually worked out better than she thought, because all of a sudden an earthquake happens and the guardian of the sea, Lugia, emerges from the volcano. It flies to our side and says that what we've done is terrible, because bringing Relicanth to life is only going to cause devastation. Lugia then explains with its psychic abilities that Relicanth was once a harbinger of disaster for the Enlightened Men. The reason why is because it's a plague carrier and it can grow really big in size. Back in the day, millions of Enlightened Men died because of the diseases it spread. We need to prevent it from leaving the volcano, otherwise it will pollute the waters, which would risk thousands of innocent lives. But we can't do this alone, so I decide to ask Lugia for its help, and when it notices the tea that we're holding, it seems to recognize it as a very good thing, but isn't going to tell me when we need to use it. But this gives the Guardian of the Sea enough proof to trust me, and together we dive down to the deepest parts of the volcano. Once we're down here, Lugia tells me that Relicanth is currently digging through the rocks to get out. But before we stop it, it wants to bestow some knowledge upon me. We learned that the Enlightened Men used to live on an island called Napalm. Most of the island has sunken into the sea over the years, but there's still a small part that remains until this day, and we call it Elysium Island, which is where the Pokemon World Championships are being held each and every year. On Elysium Island, there is also a tree called the Tree of Life, which is also the origin of all life inside of this world. Even though it's a tree, it can still assume the power of a human and Pokemon to represent the three primary forms of life. This means Elysium is the center of the world and also the strongest psychic core. The Tree of Life created 4 specific guardians: Kyogre, Groudon, Rayquaza, and Celebi. They are the foundations of this world, responsible for its stability and essential for all life. There's also 4 guardians, Lugia being the first one, and the others are called the Twins and the Fallen. Together they used to guide the Enlightened Men and Pokemon for many millennia, so there was a lot of harmony back then until one day 20 years ago. That's when the darkness arrived. But before we can find out more, we hear a big earthquake, which means Relicanth is probably digging out faster and faster, so I guess this tale of lore has to be cut short so we can save the world. Together, me and Lugia defeat Relicanth, but each time we defeat it, it goes deeper down into the volcano and grows even bigger in size, making it in turn stronger. The Guardian of the Sea wasn't going to be defeated by this big-ass aquarium fish. Once we defeated it for the 3rd time, Relicanth would finally die. Now the world has one last problem. However, we still ask Lugia what this darkness is that it talked about earlier. This was basically a catastrophic conflict that caused the decline and eventual extinction of the Enlightened Men. And it seemed to come out of nowhere, and the Guardians couldn't stop it. Out of fear, so many Enlightened Men became to worship the plague as a god, so they embraced dark magic and evil spells while falling under the corrupted sway of this death god, making them forget that they were offspring of the Tree of Light. And in the end, even one of the 4 guardians fell victim to this corruption. And exactly 20,000 years ago, the final war erupted. And that's how the Enlightened Men's civilization collapsed. This final battle took place on the island of Elysium, with the God of Death's final goal being to annihilate the Tree of Life. But despite all of its greatest efforts, they were still defeated, and most of his servants ended up being slain. The survivors of the Enlightened Men chased down the rest of the remaining followers and banished them to the Ghost Island, where they became banished men. All of the things that have been happening here in the present have caught Lugia's eye. They aren't just happening for whatever reason, because every 10,000 years, Elysium's core cycles between its peak and its low point. This means that this year, the Tree of Life is in its most vulnerable vulnerable state. So the god of death might actually return now to finally get what he wants. Take down the Tree of Life and create chaos over the entire world. This made me realize that Enna and Braxius probably want to use their terraforming machine right there on the core, and because the Pokemon Championships are being held there, it is crucial that we get our 8 gym badges and get on top of that island so we can try to prevent another war. Lugia then takes me back to the surface where we ask one more question. What's the most important thing that happened 10,000 years ago? The answer was simple. Humanity was created. A race way weaker than the enlightened men ever were. But in many ways, we're also way stronger than them. We then say our goodbyes to Lugia and group up again with the rest of the Aqua Pirates and the Professor. We explain the most important things that happened, and luckily for us, the Marines, led by the Dragon Master Drake, come along just in time to arrest the Aqua Pirates. Before leaving himself, Drake thanks me for everything we've done and urges me to come to his gym in Alabasta, where he would like to have a quick talk with me before they leave for Rhea. The same goes for the Professor and his wife, who would also love to welcome me back in their lab once we're done with our Captain Drake business. As we leave the volcano, we inform Krokoroko that the old Amber was indeed just a relicanth, which ties up that storyline as well. Back at Drake's gym, we learn that he's actually James' father and even used to be Pokemon champion. But he's left that life behind him and is now captain of the SS Challenger. And when the time comes, the entirety of his crew will help us out in the fight against Free Wings. Another cool thing about the SS Challenger is that it's the boat that brings all of the championship finalists to the Elysium Island. So once the time comes, he'll have to bring us there anyway. I also think I can learn quite a lot from a battle with Drake, even though he definitely is quite a few levels above me. You know, being the former Pokemon champion and all, and that is immediately seen in his entire team, as everything he throws out is level 95. My team is currently around level 70s, and even though we are 25 levels below him, we still put up a decent fight, taking down 2 of his Pokemon before ultimately losing. But I know we'll have a rematch one day, but until that time, we need to become stronger. Not only to beat Drake, but also to save the world and defeat Enna. And the first step to doing so is going back to the Professor and finally picking up that device we so desperately needed. We say our goodbyes to the Professor and sail back to our home country. We've been gone for quite some time, but the moment that Mr. Hilton knows we're back, he calls me into his office. He has some pretty unfortunate news. They were fighting Free Wings somewhere up north in a place called the Dragon Sanctuary. The reason they went here is because the legendary Pokemon Rayquaza was there. In the end, we ended up winning that battle, but they're still in pursuit of the remaining Free Wings agents, but we haven't heard anything back from that ranger team in the last week. So now it's our turn to see what's going on. But this entire journey wasn't without its side quests and hiccups. Like meeting a pretty strong trainer named Oren that was running his own gym so he could prepare himself for the Pokemon Championships. In the end, we ended up beating him, but it was a nice rivalry we had going there. We also interrupted a Lord Helix cult and ran into a trap placed by the most annoying character in all of Pokemon. Zizan. He offered to take me out of the hole if we became his girlfriend. Just like last time, we deny his request and he then goes on to leave me in this hole and steals my Pokemon. At first, I thought I was going to be stuck down here forever, but then I realized that it was raining very hard, and after a couple of hours, our hole had filled up with water and we could swim out. I then went in pursuit of Zizan and defeated him in yet another Pokemon battle on top of a bridge. After our victory, we order him to give my Pokemon back, but instead of doing that, he throws it in the river. And in excitement of his own douchebagness, he starts to jump around, breaks the bridge, and falls into the river himself. Let's hope the stream washes away all of his filthy thoughts. But we still needed to get our Altaria back somehow, which was floating down the river. However, in order to follow the river, we needed to get into a monastery, and the only way we could enter was by beating the guard, which ended up being a piece of cake. Which was pretty ironic because his name was Goku, a guy that normally never loses. Or maybe he does, I have no idea. I have never watched Dragon Ball. Yes, go ahead, flame me in the comments. After explaining our little problem, he explains that there's often people training down the river, so maybe they ended up finding our Pokemon. They also have a gym here, which we should go and challenge once we get Altaria back. Goku was right because Mickey and Krill were indeed training by the river and had found my Altaria, but didn't want to give it back because they thought I was a reckless trainer for losing it in the first place. But after I explained that it was actually Zizan's doing, they start to understand a little bit more because every woman on Earth seems to hate that guy. I wonder why. So after a quick battle that indeed shows off that we beat Savan, we get our Altaria back and go to the main dojo that also serves as the gym led by Arya. She's also the daughter of Yaman, the second strongest trainer in the world, and according to her, the champion, because Enna always uses cheap tricks to overpower her dad. At first she seemed very welcoming, but when I tell her that we need to reach the Dragon Sanctuary, she suddenly leaves and says that I don't have anything to look for here. However, when we walk further into the dojo, things start to make sense, because we also meet the other elders that are keeping this place running. Normally they don't let anybody go into the Dragon Sanctuary because it's really dangerous, plus they also seem to be opposed to the story that we are actually fighting free wings there and that what we're doing is for the good of the world. The reason why is because the entire monastery likes to remain neutral and doesn't join up with any sides no matter what their convictions are. After hearing this, I of course go batshit crazy and try to convince her that they shouldn't be trying to stop me from going to the Dragon Sanctuary if they aren't going to help. But they closed off the road to protect weaklings like me. So now we have to prove to them that we are indeed strong enough to head to the Dragon Sanctuary and help out all of our friends. In order to do this, we need to complete their trials. The first one was easy. We defeated an old elderly couple's Sock and Throw, which allowed us to move on to the second trial, using one of their own Pokemon that they always use here against them in the battle. So I captured the Machamp in the wild, brought it back here, and beat their Machamp with it. And the last trial was by far the most annoying one. One of the sages would hide himself somewhere across this monastery and we needed to go and find him. I quickly learned that I needed to complete an entire puzzle for this, where we needed to turn a certain tile set from red to blue. This might be the fault of my problem solving skills, but it took me half an hour to complete this stupid easy puzzle, and in the end I don't even realize how I actually did it. But I was just happy to open up the secret door, defeat Master Hyan, and then I got to go back to the dojo so we could face the gym leader Arya for real. I already know this entire place was built upon fighting type Pokemon, so I started off with Alakazam, spammed Psychic on her 3 Pokemon, and boom, 6 gym badge was acquired. Arya doesn't take this defeat very well because she doesn't realize how she lost in the first place. Throughout this entire ordeal, she was actually very mean to me and showed no respect to me or any of the other rangers. So me and the other sages tell her that the reason that she lost is because she lacks respect for others. And that's when we learned that Yaman, her father, actually treats her as a disappointment, saying that she's going to put shame on the family name by getting defeated by Jane in the championships and stuff like that. Words like that are naturally going to have your kids grow up insecure. But I try to make her realize that she's fine the way she is. And when she clears her mind and accepts her faults, she'll be able to become a much better trainer. From here on out, she's going to try and follow that advice and even escorts me along the road to Dragon Sanctuary. Along the way, she finally tells me that the rangers are indeed stranded in the frozen dunes. The reason they can't get out is because the northern exit was blocked off by boulders. But we should still be able to get to them via a secret passageway. And she also gives me the HM for strength in case we need to clear some boulders ourselves. After thanking her for the information, we head up the mountain where the legendary beast Entei suddenly blocks off my path. We know it belongs to the legendary trainer Yaman, Arya's father, and he was indeed training on the mountaintop here. At first, I tell him how honored I am to be in his presence because he used to be 9 times Pokemon champion and he saved the region countless times. Somehow, he also knows that we are Zwiggo from the Pokemon Rangers, and he even knows that we defeated Enna on Ghost Island. And he seems to find that last part particularly interesting and asks me how I actually beat her. So I tell her that that was just a fluke because she weakened down her Deoxys to transfer the power to Kyogre. He seems to get a very disappointed look on his face because the only reason he wanted to talk to me is because he could then maybe get an upper hand on Enna. He doesn't care about the good of the region or his monastery. The only thing he wants is to defeat that devilish girl in a battle so he can make himself feel better after losing to her countless times. But he still gives us some useful information. Apparently our rangers lost the fight and free rings have been able to capture Rayquaza, and the reason he knows this is because Rayquaza was once his master and actually trained him up since he was a kid. But for some reason he refused to train his daughter Arya because Rayquaza knew that the cycle was coming to an end and his fate was already sealed. The legendary Sky Snake must have known that something bad was going to happen and just accepted its destiny. But what bothers me so much is that Yaman is just going to stand here and do nothing because of his beliefs that he needs to stay neutral together with his village. I leave him with the words that nobody will be able to stay out of this. not him and not his daughter, in the hope that he will return to fighting on our side one day. But for now, we'll have to do it alone. And so we enter the dangerous dragon sanctuary. Inside, I captured 2 new Pokemon, Gible and Shelgon, defeated a Freewings hunter that tried to ambush me, and as we finally get outside of the dragon sanctuary, we run into the biker gang that we recognize from back in the underground city. We have no idea what they're doing up here, but they were speaking of a king and some kind of castle. I tried to follow them but lost their trail inside of Chiona town, which actually ended up being a good thing because this town also had a gym that I needed to defeat. This time, no big trials, just an ice puzzle, and we would be able to reach Wolfgar, who actually knows where the rangers are, but will only tell me if we can get his gym badge. That's what we were here to do anyway, so we melt and break his ice-type Pokemon with Blaziken Sky Uppercuts, Machamp's Cross Chops, and Swampert's Earthquakes. This would not only give us the ice badge, but also Jane's location, who's supposed to be up in the Pokemon Center. So we go over, find her with a bunch of rangers, and she tells me what happened. They did indeed capture Rayquaza and complete the Weather Trio, and they have taken the Master of Disguise into Castle Houndberg, which is Lord Braxis' hideout. Brennan and April have also been taken hostage, and Wade is missing too, because he and his Swords of Justice went out to look for the Wings of Death because he felt its presence nearby. Even though Jane wasn't able to find a way inside of the castle, I'm still going to check it out myself to see if we may be able to find something she missed. And that's exactly what happened because we are the main character and Celebi straight up opens a new secret passage for us. This led us into the castle where we had to defeat tons of Freewings agents, and from the moment I got a second to breathe, I sent out a message to Jane and the other rangers to tell her about the secret passageway. They would then arrive on the scene shortly after so we could infiltrate the castle from within. We then split up into different groups and I had to find my way through this castle maze all by myself, playing with these mysterious looking switches which opened and closed doorways that would eventually lead us to the castle walls. And I knew we were on the right path because we saw Lord Braxis being escorted by some of his goons. But when I stepped outside, a cold shivering gust of wind cleared my mind, and I looked in front of me to see numerous Freewings agents standing there, petrified. It felt like their souls had actually left their bodies, with them being gray and staring into the abyss, not able to react to anything that was happening around them. I didn't really have time to find out what exactly happened to them because there were more urgent matters at hand, and I was just hoping that this fate would never come to me. This is what kept me going so I could grab the castle key and enter Lord Braxis' throne room, where we finally stood face to face with the mastermind behind this entire operation. He tries to provocate me by saying that it's a shame that they sunk our hometown into the ocean, but I don't let it get to me and order him to let my friends go. But he didn't seem two-faced about my threats and called over my friends, who seemed to be under some kind of brainwashing because they didn't recognize me and did all of Braxis' bidding without a second thought. The reason Enna brainwashed them is because they captured both the legendary Pokemon Latios and Latias, making them a big threat towards their cause. And these 2 Eon Guardians are also part of Lugia's legacy, as their sole duty is normally to protect the Tree of Life. But there is another trainer here in the building with a 4th Guardian, and he's the reason that Lord Braxis needs to leave. So whoever that guy may be, he must be pretty damn dangerous. And the way Braxis was able to escape was by sending out my own friends to battle against me. I tried to snap my friends out of it, but nothing I could say would work. Even Latias started to talk to me telepathically, saying that the only way to bring my friends back was to snap them out of it with a battle. Luckily, they only sent out the Eon Guardians against me, and with the power of my Sceptile's Dragon Pulses and Salamance's Dragon Claws, we would be able to come out as the victor. This does indeed snap my friends back to reality, and they say that we need to go and look for General Steenix, because he's the one that was leading the attack against our rangers. At first, my friends of course want to help me out with this, but I can see that they're exhausted and tell them to calm down and sit back because we are going to take care of it ourselves. After I go out on my search, we find out that Braxis was actually never here. It ended up being Steenix disguised as him this entire time, allowing the real big boss to escape with Rayquaza unseen. And he led us right into his trap because he tells 6 hunters to surround me and propose to fight the way the banished man did so many centuries ago. The moment somebody's Pokemon are fully wiped out, they can be attacked physically until they're dead. As Steenix left, I prepared myself to take on these 6 hunters, which should have cut cutted our journey short if Jane didn't arrive to take my place so we could go after Stenix. We know she's an incredibly strong trainer, so I put my trust in her and followed General Stenix to the castle walls where we would have our face-off. As you may have expected, he was indeed a very formidable trainer, hosting a Crobat, Dustnor, Espeon, Claydol, and his special weapon, Mega Alakazam. But despite all of that, nothing really gave us all that much trouble. Upon his defeat, Stenix says that only dead people have witnessed the end of the war. That's when a dark, sinister voice from behind me shouts,
"And now you have seen the end of the war."
When I turned around, I saw Philillip, but he seemed very different from what we used to know him like. Stenix says that he even turned into the new Underground King and totally embraced his dark side. I try to ask why he left the Rangers and what happened to him, but he isn't here to talk and tells me to stand aside. He then slowly takes out his Pokeball and throws out the Wings of Death. And so he uses Hydreigon to erase his existence, leaving him petrified as his soul got stolen from him. This Pokemon is the reason why he's acting all depressed. It's taking away all of his happiness and amplifying the worst emotions inside of him. I try to convince him to get rid of that Pokemon, but he doesn't agree. Not until Braxius and Enna's souls have been reaped too. Just as Philillip is about to walk off, Wade also joins in, but not even he can convince him to let go of Hydreigon. Philillip then says that the next time he stands in his way, Wade would also be petrified just like Stenix. And in a quiet silence, he then walks off. And Wade then goes on to tell him that we need to take that Pokemon away from him, otherwise he will be consumed by his revenge for his sisters. And if we can't manage to do it, Wade will have to confront him with the Swords of Justice, because they are meant to take down that creature, whether Philillip is in the way or not. After this moment, we reunite with the rest of our friends, because the battle at the castle here is currently over, and since we have no idea what Freewings is up to, we might as well go and grab our last gym badge in Azuria town. So me, Brendan, and April travel there together, but there's more bad news just like always. You see, Professor Rama has built up a new lab here on the island. However, his assistant tells us that he's been kidnapped because of the remote. And when he didn't find the remote, he decided to take the professor hostage, and now he's contacted the police, and now he's made us the offer of exchanging the professor for the remote. So our mind immediately goes to Freewings. They must be behind this. But Otto, the professor's assistant, says that it's actually an aqua pirate that's behind all of this. Or at least, he's working for a person that knows about the remote. But how do we find out who he's actually working for? This led us onto a trial of Lady Marion, who has security cameras all around the city. However, before we could see her, I needed to complete her special color-coded puzzle. Every time we defeated one of her trainers, they would give us a question, and the answer to that would be a color. I would then need to find the next trainer that's linked to that color, defeat them as well, and so on and so forth until we eventually defeated the woman herself. Once we proved to her that we are strong enough to see the footage, her computer expert Sheldon shows it to us, and we see a sailor and a pirate speaking to each other, stating that when the kid shows up, take the device and deliver it to the lighthouse. So this mysterious character we're after must be at the lighthouse. Me, April, and Brendan head out there, but unfortunately the door has been blocked off with a psychic barrier, and we have to find a strong psychic ourselves in order to remove it. Luckily, Brendan knows of a psychic that lives somewhere north of here, so while they stay here to guard the place, I go and get her. But when I arrive there, I'm surprised to see yet another familiar face. It's Morgana, the evil witch that was once under Hydreigon's control. She has decided to live here as a hermit to try and atone for her sins, but what would be even better is if she actually helped us out too. And after telling her what's been going on with the Wings of Death and my friends, she agrees to help me out. We arrive at the lighthouse together, she dispels the barrier, and all of us end up climbing to the top together, where we see, guess what? Another familiar face. It's Gray, and he's hired these two sailors to keep his own father hostage. But are you ready for the real big plot twist? Morgana is actually his mother, which technically also makes her the wife of Professor Rama. We got an entire family reunion going on up here. How nice. But what's the actual reason for Gray wanting this remote? Well, that's pretty simple. His mind got corrupted by Enna, or at the very least, she told him that she's the person destined destined to transform the world and end the cycle of suffering. We can even fathom the extent of her power. And through her guidance, Gray also managed to master his own psychic powers, which is how he established that barrier downstairs. With this new knowledge, he orders us to hand over the machine, but when we refuse, it ends up like usual in an all-out brawl, as I had to go head-to-head again with my former starting Pokemon. Gray had shaped up to become a very good trainer, with an all-around solid team of Gengar, Gyarados, Shiftry, Electivire, Hypno, and of course Typhlosion. But all of that still wasn't enough for him to beat me. I guess it's because his life is still fueled by anger and rage. So in the end, fighting for what's right overcomes his selfish actions, and with their defeat, his lackeys leave the scene, but he stays behind because his parents want to tell him what happened. More specifically, why they abandoned him as a child. But the core thing is that they don't want forgiveness, they just wanted him to listen. So apparently one morning, Morgana was just gone, which left Gray all by himself. However, his father never did anything of the sort, because Morgana ordered him to stay away from her and Gray. The main reason being that she knew that he was going to have psychic powers, which she herself always saw as a curse. However, Gray himself thinks they're a gift. He loves his psychic powers. But when Gray was just a baby, Morgana saw into his future. He was destined to live a life of sorrow and loneliness, and she could not allow that to happen to her only boy. So she traveled across the globe trying to find a way to either suppress or erase his psychic ability so that he would have a chance of living a normal life. And so Rama gave up his only dream of having a son just so Morgana could try this out, because both of them thought that's what would be best for him. She pleads Gray to forgive his father, but instead he bursts out into maniacal laughter, saying that Morgana destroyed his life by taking away his father and making me hate him for no reason at all, because the one he should have actually been hating was his mom all along. He then leaves after saying that she will one day pay for this, and I guess that's the end of the family drama for now. Me and Morgana stay behind while the rest of them go to the lab, and that's when I realized something. The story she just told is wrong, or at least part of it is, because the real reason she abandoned Gray was because of the wings of death controlling her emotions. But Morgana would rather have it this way, and even vows to stand by my side against Philillip and the wings of death when the time finally comes to release him from it. But for now, we need to focus on the championship so we can get to Elysium. Morgana then leaves me behind, we head to the lab and find out that the final gym leader is actually Jane. April and Brendan already go ahead to challenge her, but we stay here with the professor to hand over the remote controller. He's going to cook up a plan together with the Rangers HQ because the terraforming machine can only be shut down by the remote controller in a certain radius. So having it isn't enough. Once the machine is activated, we still need to somehow get close to it. And that's what they're going to try and figure out while I go and take on Jane as my final gym challenge. At first, we have a recap of all of our adventures together, and then Jane proposes to just hand us the gym badge without a battle. But that would not be the honorable way of earning it. So we all speak up against this idea, but Jane doesn't have the time to fight all three of us because she needs to go on some urgent business. So I'll be the one to battle her, and just like in the first tournament we joined up on, I'll be taking in one of each of my friends' Pokemon too. So it was my Electivire, Brendan's Raichu, and April's Meganium against Jane's Lapras, Kingdra, and Milotic. An incredible matchup, but we didn't even need our friend's Pokemon, as my Electivire used Thunders to shock away all of my opponents, which gave all three of us the Aqua Badge. This is going to allow us to register for the Pokemon Championships, but just as we're about to head out, April says that our little truce is over. Yes, we helped each other out as Rangers, but in her eyes that doesn't make us friends, because friends are not supposed to crush each other in the championships to become champion. Brendan says that all of this is kind of BS because friends can support and have competitive battles with each other without getting mad or sad if they win or lose. But that doesn't seem to be the case for April. I tell Brendan to not take her too seriously, and the three of us then head out to the championship registration office. Once we're signed in, we head over to the Battle Coliseum where the first rounds are going to be held. Along the way, we ran ran into Zizon, that filthy cheater. As usual, he's not only here to mock me, but he will also be participating in the tournament. Him and his two lackeys try to ambush me, but that's when a very powerful trainer named Wanda jumps in to save my ass. We learned that she actually was the 7th strongest trainer in the world, and last year she got knocked out in the quarterfinals, so her goal is to do better in this year's tournament. We wish each other luck in our upcoming battles and then head over to the Coliseum to meet up with Wade. He explains me a little bit about the tournament and that we have a room together with the rest of the Rangers like Brendan and April. However, we get interrupted by Philillip, who walks in. Wade tells him that he can't use the Wings of Death inside of this tournament. It would be way too dangerous for all the people involved, but Philillip doesn't listen and tells Wade that if he gets in his way, he'll wipe us off the map with his almighty dragon, friends or not. Once Philillip is gone, we tell Wade that we actually met the last host of the dragon and say that the only way to get rid of its influence is to defeat it in battle. So that has to be our goal with Philillip. As we were talking about this, a strange man named Alan overheard us. He seems to be Wade's rival and is the 6th strongest trainer in the region. And this year, he's going to shoot to become champion. The only other thing we learn about him is that Wade absolutely despises his guts. Once our conversation is over, we meet up with Brendan and April. Everybody here is pretty nervous about their upcoming fights, and while most battles are going to start at the same time, there is one that starts before every single one of them: the Premier Battle. This is where 2 random opponents face each other to kick off the tournament, and there's a superstition hanging around it that whoever loses will have misfortune for the rest of their tournament, and the winner will go on to do great things. After this, the director and one of his pop stars kick off the tournament with an announcement. Here we learn that the tournament will consist out of 3 rounds. The first one will be held in the Battle Coliseum, and once the top 16 have been determined, we move on to the rounds on the SS Challenger, who will then bring the 4 finalists to Elysium Island to have their final. The random battle generator then put me up against Philillip in the very first round of the tournament to kick everything off. Everybody at the table starts to panic, saying that this has to be a joke, but I try to reassure them that I can battle against Philillip and win. Maybe that's the only way that we can get rid of his Wings of Death and bring him back to his old self. But we know that the real reason they're so afraid is because he can use the Wings of Death to petrify me and win the battle that way. But I know Philillip. Deep down, he wouldn't do something like that against his very best friends. After carefully planning our strategy, the time for the Premier Battle has come. We step foot into the arena, listen to a wonderful concert of Daisy and her Jigglypuff, and step foot into the ring to face Philillip. At first, I try to get into his head by going over all the great times we had together, but he says that none of this is going to bring back the old Philillip. And for this new him, I'm just an obstacle he needs to destroy so he can reap his revenge. Absolutely not the way we wanted to start this battle, but we have no other choice than to go all out. His darker undertone now shows that he actually only uses dark Pokémon anymore, which made his Umbreon and Tyranitar's easy targets for Machamp and Swampert. However, I would have never expected for him to use Hydreigon as his final Pokémon. Here I had a choice to try and fight it, but Wade shouted out from the stands that I should surrender before he steals my soul with it. As the stress is getting to my brain, I shout out that I'm going to forfeit the battle, which saves my own life, at least for now. I end up falling unconscious, and when I finally get back to my senses, Wade explains that this was all the doing of the Wings of Death, and that even a couple of people in the crowd faded as well. However, the president can't ban this Pokemon because everybody can use any Pokemon they want. That's just the rule of the tournament. This means we're now 0-1 in the tournament, and Wade as well because he interrupted our match. But if we can still win all of our other rounds, we still go through to the SS Challenger. We regroup back with Brendan, who's already gotten 2 wins under his belt, and he believes that me and Wade can win the upcoming battles, no questions asked. So with high hopes and a ton of belief in ourselves, we end up winning against Stellaria and her electric types in the second round, mostly because of Salamence and Swampert carrying with Outrage and Earthquake. After our first victory, we regroup with Wade and April, who've also both won their second battle. However, in the next round, I'm up against Dixon, the number 8 trainer in the world, and Wade was immediately worried that we weren't going to win. He also thinks it's no coincidence that we've come up against 2 of the strongest trainers in the region already and are about to have to face a third. This makes him realize that somebody might be messing with the matchup system, so he wants to do some investigating inside of the WPA so we can check out that random battle simulator. We end up walking straight through the door and into the basement, where our suspicions get confirmed because we get attacked by shadow balls. As we battle our way through the traps, we eventually reach the generator room and see that 2 Freewing agents have taken an employee hostage, telling him to put me up against the worst matchups they can. Once we defeat them in a Pokemon battle, the president walks in with his security and we tell him what's been going on here. They arrest the Freewings agents, but unfortunately they can't change my matchup anymore. But if we manage to win against Dixon, our next one will actually be randomly generated. So I guess we just have to prove that we're better than the 8th best trainer in the region, which should be no problem. But Alan, Wayne's rival, tries to get me off my milk. He calls me his girlfriend and says that he has never seen Wade this unfocused. He gave up one of his battles for me, we sneaked off together to some random place, so naturally he thinks that I'm having some sort of impact on him. I immediately dismiss these rumors and tell him that we're just friends, but he just doesn't believe me. But I don't care, I get my head clear and end up fighting Dixon inside of the Sandstorm Arena. Unlike the other trainers, he doesn't really talk much and prefers to use Rock and Steel type Pokemon, which were a perfect matchup for my Swampert and Blaziken, who used their Surfs, Earthquakes, Sky Uppercuts, and Flare Blitzes to break through them all. Which means we're now 2-on-1, so moving on to the next round should become way easier. And what helps a ton as well is the support of your family and friends, which is exactly why my mom and Professor Rama have come here. With their kind words of encouragement, we would easily win our next 2 rounds against some random trainers. This means it's time for the next part of the tournament, the knockout rounds. If we lose just 1 battle here, it's over. No getting onto the SS Challenger and no getting to Elysium Island. So me and my buddies all focus up and head upstairs for the next rounds. On our way, we run into Wanda, who warns me about Alan, who's going to try and approach me to become his ally. He does this every year so he can try to form alliances he can use later on in the rounds. But I already know that I will never side with someone like him because he does indeed seem like a real douchebag. The reason she's notifying me of this is because last year she sided with Alan, and the way he helps his allies is by giving him his own Pokemon, giving them experience and battle power while not having to lift a finger himself. He can then analyze his Pokemon's matches to see who they do good against, and that's basically his scummy way of making it up in the tournament bracket. And because she's helped me out, I also warn her of Enna and Philillip, who are arguably the most dangerous people in this entire tournament. The president then announces that the next 3 rounds will be the last ones before the SS Challenger, and if you get knocked out, you better go home. So we meet up with the rest of our crew and ask them where April is. They disappointingly mention that she's gotten her own room because she doesn't want to associate with us during the tournament anymore. But no matter, we don't need her either, and with some nice battling tips from Wade, we start our next round. Here we faced off against Virgil, the guy that won against Philip in the Underground City, and while he put up a good fight with his Snorlax, Arcanine, and Machamp, our team of Swampert, Salamence, and Alakazam was eventually able to win us our first round. Wade and Brendan also won their battles, which is really good news, but moments later, a random trainer walks in telling me that Alan wants me to come to his room. I already know what this is going to be about, and after entering here, we see that he's already made a big alliance with a lot of people, even the worst person on planet Earth, Zizon. After he asks me if we would join him too, we tell him that all of this is just a ruse so he can train his own Pokemon and analyze more battles, and that's when he sort of loses his cool and challenges me to a one-on-one Pokemon battle. But even here, he ended up cheating, as I defeated his first Pokemon Lucario, but then he threw out Shaman, his ace, and used it to flatten my Electivire. This made me realize even more what a big digbag he is, but I try not to let it get to me and rejoin all of my companions. They also tell me to ignore Alan from here on out, and to just focus on our next round, which ended up being against a trainer we already faced and beaten before, Oran. And this time was no different, as my Electivire used his Thunderbolt against Charizard, and Salamence cleared away the rest of his remaining team members. Once we say GG, we end up running into April and confront her about not wanting to be friends anymore, but she just says to stay out of her business, which we will be doing for the time being. I'm just glad to see that she hasn't lost any of her battles either. This meant me and the boys could move on to the final 32 round of the tournament here, but unfortunately for our loyal supporters, this part of the Coliseum is only dedicated to the winners, so they can't join us for support. But there's some pretty bad news. April is being convinced by Alan to join his alliance, so we go over to tell her not to do it because it's just a ruse for him to win the tournament. But just like last time, she tells us to stay out of her business, because she already knows what Alan is doing and is going to accept his offer anyway. So now we can't do anything else but to accept her decision. decision. Alan then gets called in to fight, and we go up to the roof to meet up with Philillip. I try to talk to him about something else in the dragon, his feelings. But the only thing he bursts out is that he's ashamed that the people who killed his sisters are still alive. I try to tell him that they will atone for their sins in prison, but that's still not enough for him. He's going to devour their souls and condemn them to a fate worse than death, and he is not going to be stopped by anyone. Not even me. Wanda then proceeds to try and calm me down and believes our entire story about Philillip, and when we finally start to feel better, she goes off for her next battle. And then we hear over the announcement that our next battle is going to be against Zizon. It really couldn't be better than this. We finally get to take revenge on that stupid man that keeps popping up at every worst moment in time. But when we stand face to face with him, he seems very sure of himself and says that I'm even going to be screwed, all because he has a special surprise in store for me. So we enter the arena together, and as our battle is about to kick off, the sprinkler system turns on. This was his special plan, protecting his bugs from a major fire-type weakness by making our arena filled with water. But scummy tricks like that won't work on me, because we don't need a lot of firepower to overcome him. Just look at Alakazam and his psychics taking down his Venomoth and Galvantula. He then brought out his Volcarona to set up the sun, meaning that my Salamence could use his flies and flamethrowers to deal with the remaining 3 Pokemon. He then has the biggest temper tantrum a grown man can have, shouts at his Pokemon that they're stupid and then I cheated, but it's clearly that he's just projecting his own actions upon me. I tell him to accept his defeat like a real man, and this makes him even more mad as the police take him away for conspiring in the unauthorized activation of the sprinkler system. So Zizon's karma finally catches up with him, and me and my friends are on to the SS Challenger for the round of 16. So we head off to the port, say goodbye to our mom, Professor Rama, and Mr. Hilton, because once we eventually reach Elysium, we'll have to go up against Lord Braxius and his evil plan. So we better win our next few battles so we can even get there. Me and Brendan then board the ship and go to Captain Drake's room, because this is where we find out what the draw of our round of 16 is going to look like and which trainers we're going to face. The only real matchup that mattered here was me against my new friend Wanda. I know she really wants to win this tournament as well, but we can't show her any compassion, at least not in our battle. But before our round starts, we go to sleep and meet up with the rest of our friends inside of Wade's cabin. Here we discuss that the boat is going to dock at Port Florida, the last human settlement before Elysium, and the trainers who will be defeated tomorrow are forced to stay there and will be escorted back to their hometown. So if we end up winning this next round, we'll officially be going to Elysium. Wade has also been informed that there's likely a free-wing spy among the trainers that are also in the tournament, so we'll have to keep our eyes peeled if we want to find out who it is. After we are done discussing, we head to bed, and the next morning we do indeed dock at the port. Before the tournament eventually goes further, we have some free time to spend here, and Brendan thinks it's a good idea to find some local trainers to train himself up, and tells me to come and meet him at the lighthouse. Just as we're about to head inside, a very angry man walks out, screaming about how the police officer here has told him that he can't use his drills to dig some kind of tunnel, and that he's going to do it anyway, with or without their permission. We then enter the building ourselves and see that it is indeed a police office. We see Brendan sitting next to a girl named May, who's talking to her big sister, the police officer, about the drilling man. It seems like she really wants to help out to become a police officer herself, but her sister is way too overprotective, and when Brendan tells her that she is actually a really good trainer because they already fought before, she still doesn't want to let her sister go out on this mission. So I step in and propose a new idea. I battle Stevie right here so she can show off how strong of a trainer she really is. Yes, I might have swept 5 of her 6 Pokemon with my Alakazam Psychic, and my Electivire ended the fight with a Thunderbolt, but at least she was able to take down 1 of my Pokemon. After seeing this display of strength, her sister finally eases up and tells us what's been going on here lately. So first things first, a couple of days ago, a few Aqua Pirates escaped from the prison cells here, and now they are running loose among the island. Secondly, the man with the drill is named Kevin, and he's been hunting the 3 legendary Therian Pokemon Landorus, Tornadus, and Thundurus. And this is illegal because those Pokemon have been asleep and preserved for a very long long time. So we get assigned with both bringing the Aqua Pirates back and stopping Kevin. Our first course of action is going to the Prancing Ponyta, a bar where everybody knows everything. And after Steffi runs off to the bar already, I stay behind with Brendan and ask if he actually likes this girl. He gets incredibly nervous and says no, but I know that's not the real answer. So after teasing him a little bit, we headed over to the bar together and learned that he's somewhere on Iova Island. After we arrive here, we see that Kevin has actually stolen the drill from an old man and has hired the pirates to work as his bodyguards. We follow in their footsteps, but this turns out to be a trap as the Aqua Pirates dug yet another hole which we ended up falling into, giving them a chance to escape back to their drilling activities. Luckily, we overheard that they were heading to Lapata Island, and what's even better is that one of the other contestants, Haran, a ninja, helps us out of the hole. The four of us then battle through many Aqua Pirates and eventually reach the cave where Kevin is drilling. They tried to hold us back by creating waves with their polywhirls, but once we washed them away as well, we got through to the main chamber where we found Kevin sitting on top of a throne that's overlooking the three genies. We tell him to step down and stop this illegal plan, but of course he's not willing to. And because the rest of our friends are sort of afraid to face these three gods, I step up myself and challenge him to a battle to where if I win, this stops forever, and he leaves all of the genies alone. And even though these are legendary Pokemon, I actually ended up winning quite easily, with Electivire taking on Tornadus, Swampert Landorus, and Salamence ended it off by defeating Thundurus. He then tries to run off, but the police manage to intercept him and take him away to prison, but this leaves the genies behind still. So me, Brendan, and Steffi decide to each pick one of them to fight, and then we can either choose to defeat them forever or to capture them for ourselves so that they can never be used in wrong hands again. I picked up the goat of VGC Landorus, which will make my team quite a bit stronger, and while Brendan also captured Tornadus, Steffi decided to defeat her genie so that it could live freely. She realizes that without Kevin's help, this never would have been possible, so after giving him a peck on the cheek that sort of petrifies him like Hydreigon, we say goodbye to Steffi and head back to the boat to end off this adventure. Once we're all grouped up back into Drake's room, Alan tries to stir up some trouble to try and get us off our game, but we don't let him get to us, and Brendan and Wade eventually scare him back to his own crew, just in time for the next 4 rounds to start. This didn't include my battle against Wanda, so we had some free time to talk to April. Both of us realized that if we win our next matches, we'll be going up against each other in the next round, so only one of us can move on to the final 4. Up until this point, April has also not used any of Alan's Pokemon because of her own convictions, but if she manages to beat me, she is going to take them to try and win the finals. I also try to give Philillip some advice, but he's just being his old depressed self, so instead we go and talk to our next opponent, Wanda. We're both incredibly anxious for our battle, however we'll be maintaining peace by keeping it clean. Just in time because the last rounds are over and it's time for us to fight. We were both ready for a fiery battle as we stepped into the ring. We ended up taking first blood as Alakazam finished off Heracross with a Psychic. Her Florges then moonblasted away my Alakazam, but this allowed me to bring in Landorus, who could not only Earthquake it, but also Venusaur and Rapidash, leaving her with only Haxorus. This thing quite literally leveled the playing field, taking down my Landorus, Sceptile, and Swampert, who combined would do enough damage for my Electivire to deliver the final blow with Thunderbolt. At first, I can't believe that I've won, but then I go back to say, thanks for the battle, Wanda. This was one of the best ones I've ever had. And the same was true for her as well. And she wasn't even all that mad for going out this way. We saw our final goodbyes to her, and she has one last warning. I need to watch my back on Elysium, because when she was there the last time, something felt off about that island. With that in mind, Wanda's story ends, but we have to keep going, because Drake requested me to come to his quarters. But it's not only me, the other 7 top trainers are also here, and I'm just glad to see that all of my friends have made it too. And so we go over the scheduled battles for tomorrow. Wade will be up against Alan, and I'm just glad to see that that rivalry will finally come to an end, and I believe that Wade can win. Lady Moralia will be up against Brendan, and we don't really know much about her yet, so this will be an interesting matchup to see too. I will of course be clashing it out with April, and finally Philillip versus Haran. Drake then dismisses the rest of the room, but tells me to stay behind, because he thinks this is the perfect time to have a rematch after our battle in the gym where he defeated me. I'm incredibly stoked to show him how strong I've become, because this guy guy is a real legend. However, when we're about to head to the designated battle spot, we run into April talking on the phone with her uncle. And if I need to remind you, he is the head of the Rangers headquarters. On the phone, it seems like he's very harsh on April and always tries to push her further, even though she likes to take it slow sometimes. It also feels like he doesn't accept failure if she does, which is probably why she hates me a little bit deep down, because I'm one of the only ones that can defeat her, which then brings up that feeling of disappointing her uncle. After this analysis, she tells her uncle that she's not useless and you're just going to try her best whether she wins or not. But he then abruptly hangs up on her. And I can clearly see this upsetted her. But when I try to be there, she pushes me away yet again, just like always. So I make the choice of letting her deal with those problems herself again, and meet up with Captain Drake instead so we can have our battle. But I misunderstood him wrong. When he said a one-on-one battle, I thought he meant one Pokemon, so I just brought my Electivire. And while I still put a pretty big dent in his team, I ended up losing because of my own incompetence. But it's a loss I'm willing to take because I know we could have defeated him if I had my entire squad with me. After our battle, he knows that we're going to go on to that top 4 and promises with all of his might to help out against Enna and Braxius once the time comes. But for now, all of us needed to get some rest so we could tackle our battles tomorrow. But when the morning finally came, we heard that there was something terrible going on. Brendan had gotten really sick and was puking off of the side of the boat. But this isn't just a regular stomach ache because his nails are purple, so April immediately takes him away to the doctor's office. Haran, the ninja, then comes up to us and says that he's probably been poisoned. We ask how he would even know this kind of information, and then we learn that it's not a him at all. It's a person we actually know pretty well, Arya, the 6th gym leader and daughter of the former champion Karyap. She was here under a different name so that her father wouldn't be disappointed in her when she would eventually lose. However, she also knows of a way to help out Brendan that she learned from the monks back at the monastery. So all of us join Brendan at the medical quarters where we assess the situation on how this could have happened in the first place. Wade actually thinks that he got poisoned by one of the other contestants and even knows about a trainer that can disguise themselves so well that we would never notice. And I already know he's talking about Lady Mosk, one of Freewing's admins. And the only person we don't know anything about is Lady Moralia. So she must not only be the Freewing spy, but also the one who poisoned Brendan. So while Wade and April stay behind to take care of Brendan, I go to search her quarters for any clues and end up finding a mysterious looking artifact, but when I touch it, I get transported into another dimension, or at least in my mind. After looking around, we see a Freewings member, but this isn't a Freewings member at all. It's actually a consciousness that's been trapped inside of this area for an eternity, and it's taken over this body because it's the last one that entered this space. And my mind is currently trapped here too, while my physical body is still in the quarters, not able to move or say anything. And so we asked who this person in front of us really is, and that's when we learned that he used to be a priest of the Banished Men, the people who worship the evil death god. Somehow he got trapped here for centuries, but recently Madame Mosk has been sending minds here, but only those she deemed as adversaries, and he then proceeded to consume their minds, leaving them lifeless in the physical world. And he's trying to find a way to put his consciousness into another person's body and thinks that I'm the perfect candidate for this. But the only way to do this is for him to engage in a contest with me. So we make a deal. If I win, I get to leave this realm, and if he wins, he gets my body. After this agreement, we played a little mini game where we both had to take away either 1 or 2 spheres, and the last one who would take away a sphere would be the winner. And as you may have guessed, there was no other option for me than to win, and so our mind got sent back to the real world. Now that we have overcome the artifact, we can safely take it with us so Madame Mosk can't use it anymore, and we then head back to Brendan to see how he's doing. But there's really bad news. He's gone unconscious. It could take hours for him to wake back up, but at least the treatment is working. And the big problem is that he needs to battle in the next hour. Otherwise, he's disqualified, unconscious or not. And we can't let our friend be eliminated by a scummy way like this. So we come up with a pretty clever plan. I'm going to disguise myself as Brendan with the help of Arya and fill in with his very own Pokemon so we can fight this next round for him. I'll just have to keep my mouth shut, otherwise people might recognize my voice. With a lot of nerves, we approach the arena, but then Latios comes out of his Pokeball to speak to me. He now sees himself as the guardian of Brendan and knows that what we're doing is the right thing, because his destiny is to bring the boy to Elysium Island. And so he isn't only going to help us out with his battling ability, but he's also going to use his psychic powers to create an illusion so no one can find out we're not Brendan. This definitely calms our nerves down quite a lot and allows us to step into the ring with way more confidence. Lady Moralia is incredibly shocked to see that we've made it somehow, and without saying many words, we use Brendan's team to battle against her. Her team is filled with so many poison-type Pokemon that Latios could easily clear off the field with Luster Purges. This also clears up how she was able to poison Brendan in the first place. It was with her Pokemon. The only one that gave us a little bit of trouble was Seviper, but when this snake was skinned, Tornadoes would blow away the rest with his hurricanes. And that's how we got Brendan on to the next round. Lady Maz then leaves by saying that the world is going to chase anyway no matter what we try. We then transfer our Pokemon back to Wade, who can give them back to Brendan, and after our fight we meet up with Arya as well because we need to find out where Lady Mosk went before she pulls any other crap. Speaking of that, it's already happening. A big group of Free Wings members have boarded the ship with a submarine to try and get Lady Mosk out. Wade is able to storm their defenses and break down one of the barriers they put up with Terrakion, but we were too late. Lady Mosk and one of her grunts messed with the navigation system, and if we don't fix it straight away, the ship will go off course and we'll never be able to reach Elysium. So me and the navigator stay behind to try and fix it while Wade chases after her. This ended up being another minigame where we needed to shift the right crosses onto the right places, and after playing around with it for around 10 minutes, we eventually got it. This allowed us to chase down Wade, who was already fighting Madame Mosk with his Cobalion, but she's able to jump into the submarine just in time, allowing her to escape. Wade says that we'll meet her again on Elysium, and that for now we should just focus on our fight against April, because there's nothing more we can do to try and stop them from here. So we head back to the arena to witness Philillip defeating Arya, and leaves after saying that Enna is the only one that can give him a battle that will fulfill his desire. We go over to comfort Arya and tell her that she did great, and that we should just be grateful that he didn't have to use Hydreigon against her. As usual, Alan comes over again to stir the pot, saying that she's weak and a failure for getting defeated by Philillip, and that he's going to destroy Wade in their upcoming battle. After telling him to piss off, we tell Wade that he's going to be able to beat him because a pathetic man like that would never be able to become champion. After ensuring Wade that he's going to be okay, we hear a voice talking to us telepathically, and after going outside, we see that it's our good old friend Lugia. He's here to tell us that the Dark One isn't just going to take the form of a Pokemon or a person, it's actually just all evil in general, and we have defeated evil so many times and are going to keep doing it. The second reason is that it also wants to join our team in the fight against April, since she has his sister Latias, so it would only be fair that we fight a Guardian with our own Guardian. With Lugia by our side, we head back to the arena and start preparing for our fight against April. At first, I tell Wade and Arya that April might be using some Pokemon that Alan gave to her, and those could be incredibly strong. However, they reassure me that a trainer's bond with their own Pokemon is way more important than having strong ones that you don't know at all. On the other hand, we hear Alan getting into April's head, saying that her uncle will be disappointed in her if she loses this battle to me. As April walks up to the battle arena, we can see that something is totally off with her, but even though she's struggling emotionally, that doesn't mean we have to hold back. And so I tell her that no matter what, her friends will always love her, and I then throw out my Landorus against her Meloetta. We win this matchup after hitting 2 Earthquakes, but she also has the other form of Meloetta next. So I use Salamance's Outrages to get that off the field as well, leaving her with only Latias. This Eon Guardian, as usual, is incredibly strong and takes down my Salamence and Sceptile before Electivire finishes it off with a Giga Impact. Once her ace Pokemon is defeated, she bursts out. How could you have taken out Latias? Alan gave me the Soul Dew, which should have made it impossible to kill. And so Alan shouts out to use the other 3 Pokemon he gave her to finish the battle, but that's when Brendan's voice comes out of nowhere and says,
No, April, you're better than this.
All of us tell him that he's an idiot because he should be in the hospital bed, but he's not going to stand by as one of his best friends forgets who she is. And even though Brendan can barely stand, he says he's going to wait here until April can stand up for herself too. Because this is supposed to be one of her most important battles in life, and she isn't even happy about it. All she can think about is pleasing her stupid uncle and Alan. So he tells her to shake off those poisoned words and to focus on her own inner self. This makes April realize that she is indeed just doing it for others and not for herself, and so our battle continues after she chooses to battle with her own Pokemon from here on out. And even though this is the best choice she could have made for herself, it didn't matter. My Lugia just set up some Calm Minds and swept through her Vaporeon, Gardevoir, and Meganium, knocking her out of the tournament, but at least she lost on her own terms. Wade and Brendan then come up to congratulate the both of us, and April tells Alan she's never going to talk to him again. And while the next round between Alan and Wade will start soon, April does take me and Brendan away to her cabin first. Here she hands over the Soul Duel to Brendan because she won't be able to use it anymore, and she even gives her guardian Pokemon Latias to me. All because she can't even go to Elysium Island and face Free Wings anymore, and since we are still going to go up against Enna, Latias might as well protect me. We thank her for being such a good friend despite all of our hardships, and then head to the arena to see the final clash between Alan and Wade as they throw out their final Pokemon, Keldeo and Shaman. Alan thinks he has the upper hand because Shaman is indeed good against Keldeo, but Wade was prepared as he tanked a Seed Flare and told his Keldeo to use Hidden Power Ice. This 4-time super effective move knocks Alan out of the tournament, and that's when Alan sort of emotionally breaks down, saying that he planned months ahead for this battle and doesn't understand how he could have lost. He then leaves the arena after damning all of us, and we celebrate Wade's victory together. Arya also asks Drake to try and convince her father Yaman, who is already on the island, to join their fight against Free Wings. But unfortunately, Drake declines because he knows Yaman doesn't like to be in conflict, so I promise her that I'm going to try and convince Yaman so that she and her entire family legacy don't go down as people who just stood by and did nothing. And even though she can't go on the island with us, I know that a ninja like her can sneak past the security and reach her father herself too. We then go to sleep, and the next day we are docked at the Elysium gates, where the finalists, me, Wade, Brendan, and Philillip, get to go on one of our final challenges. However, like usual, there's trouble brewing, because Alan got contacted by some Free Wings hunters, and they promised him ultimate strength and the title of champion if he helped them out in taking us down. Luckily, April also overheard their plan and is going to try to contact us before it's too late. In the meantime, Daisy introduces us to the camp. Here we have our own living quarters, the city walls which are meant to protect the camp from the strong Pokemon on the other side, and of course the scientist WPA office, plus a little battle arena. After this tour, the president explains what the tournament is going to consist of from here on out. We aren't just going to go up against trainers. No, we need to do a test of strength, courage, and luck, along with our skills as trainers. Currently, there are still 8 players in the tournament, us 4 and the Elite 4. Out of these 8, only 4 will advance, and they will then form the new Elite 4. And they will then compete against each other so they can go up against Enna in the grand final for the title of the tournament. The finals will be taking place within the island's jungle. Tomorrow we'll be teleported in there and we'll have 2 tasks. The first one is to make it to the Camp B facility, and the second one is to defeat one of the other 7 trainers before we get there. And the first 4 to do it can then head deeper into the jungle. But before all of this kicks off, we need to have an exhibition battle with Morgana against Rainer and Brendan. This is basically just a battle to excite the audience at home, because you can see old and experienced trainers going up against exciting new ones. Once all of this has been explained, me, Wade, and Morgana stay behind because Wade really wanted to ask a lot of stuff about her being possessed by the Wings of Death. Even though the possession in her is gone, Wade doesn't trust her one bit. And when he finally leaves the room, Morgana tells me something shocking. The person that was possessed by this dragon before her was Wade's mother. Back then, he was only 3 years old, but his mother ended her own life after the possession ended because her consciousness could never live with the horrible things she committed under the possession of that dragon. That's the real reason why Wade has been hunting the Wings of Death, and also why he wants to kill it so badly. So now that we understand a little bit more about Wade's backstory, I can try to empathize with the hate he has for the dragon. But we can't dwell on this for too long because it's already time for the exhibition match. Here, me and Morgana were indeed up against Rainer and Brendan, and while they used Tralligator and Crocodile, our Sceptile and Mega Banette could easily overpower them, mainly with my energy balls though. Me and Brendan then ask Morgana what this Mega Evolution phenomenon actually is, because the only other time I've seen it was with General Stenix and his Mega Alakazam. She explains that it only happens inside of Elysium cores, and you need an item called Mega Eviolite to even make it happen, which is why they're so rarely seen. But it does make your Pokemon a lot stronger. So let's hope we can also take advantage of this later. After this, we get a call from April telling us to come back to the ship because she wants to tell us something. In the meantime, Lord Braxius, Enna, and Freewings are transporting their terraforming machine to the top of the mountain because they need to place it on some kind of exact coordinates so this plan can work. They've also handed over Rayquaza, Kyogre, and Groudon to their hunter squad, which probably ended up giving them to Alan to try and stop us. However, Enna plans that Alan is just going to be a distraction and won't actually be able to defeat us. So now that we know what they're up to, I head over to the boat where April explains the entire Freewings plan to me as well. We thank her for this information and go to Wade's cabin to have a meeting together with Jane and Brendan. Jane even scouted out the area and saw that Freewings are probably going to set up the machine on top of Mount Antera. But we don't need to know its exact location because with the Professor's controller, we can just turn it off once we're inside of a certain radius of the machine. Jane also needs to get the Rangers inside of the jungle somehow. So we'll have to find a secret passageway through the Sun Valley and sneak them in somehow because the WPA has hired mercenaries to keep anybody else out. Once our plan is fully laid out, we hit to sleep that same night, and this is when I ended up having a very weird dream where Celebi led me to something that looked like the Tree of Life. However, this dream ended up really bad as I got picked up by some kind of dark creature that tried to swallow me whole. And just as I was about to die, I of course woke up screaming and already late for the next phase of the tournament, so I headed out and joined up with my fellow trainers. Here the president kicks everything off and tells the world that the next round of the championship is about to start. All of us then get sent into this dangerous jungle where we first meet up with Jane at the checkpoint. The both of us are going to team up against the mercenaries so we can let the professor and the rest of the rangers inside of the island. Once we defeat every single one of them, we reach the end of Passage Cave and open up the special gate which does indeed let in the professor, rangers, and even April's uncle. And our next part of the plan is to activate the remote controller. And the professor has already found the best location for this, a hill in the northernmost part of the valley, referred to by the WPA as Hill 101. With the plan clear, all of us split up and head to Hill 101, but soon after, I end up running into a bloody Rainer that got attacked by some of the Freewings hunters. The only way he was able to escape was because of his legendary Pokemon Raikou, and while we could have easily knocked him out of the tournament here, we have mercy on him and send him straight to the intensive care where he can hopefully recover. Along the way, me and the Rangers also found a ton of petrified Freewing members that definitely ended up facing Philillip and his Dragon's Wrath. We followed this path of destruction to another team of rangers that required our help in taking down some shadow ball traps, and once the coast was clear, they could finally move on to their next position. In the meantime, it seems like Lord Braxius has lost control over his hunters, and he now thinks that Enna is also defying his orders. He's starting to lose grip over his own organization, which is a very good thing for us, because we have just placed down the remote controller with the rest of the team. With our controller in place, we keep their mega terraforming machine cancelled, and our next step will be to full-on destroy it so they can never use it again. But the problem is that we still don't know where the machine is, so what if we just capture Lord Braxius and let him tell us the location of it? I know, a crazy proposition, but one we can actually accomplish. Mr. Hilton even appoints me as the leader of this attack, while Jane has to stay behind to protect the remote controller, which is something she doesn't like at all. She would like to lead this attack instead. But the director's word is final. I'll be leading it no matter what. And so we follow his orders, team up with Brendan, and send our Raging team to attack the Freewings. After battling through waves of them, we eventually storm their security gate, which has been closed off. But Eerie and April arrive just at the right time to overpower their last security man and open the gate for us. After a quick regrouping session, we know that Lord Braxius is nearby, so we chase after him and eventually reach a cave that splits off into two paths. So naturally, we split up trying to find them, but I stumble upon something that's way worse than Lord Braxius. An eerie tomb of an enlightened man that has been unburied. We didn't have a lot of time to check it out, so further along the mountain we see April and Brendan facing off against Braxius. And even though he's already been defeated by the both of them, and just as they're about to make the arrest and take him away, the worst thing ever happens. Philillip shows up. Naturally, his only instinct is to attack Lord Braxius to kill him for what he did to his sisters. However, Brendan cannot allow this to happen, so he stands up for Lord Braxius and tells Philillip that if he wants him, he needs to go through him. And even after explaining that they need Braxius to stop their plan, Philillip doesn't care. he just wants this man dead. And after that, Brendan tells April to take Braxis away as he challenges Philillip to a fight he can't decline, otherwise he'll be kicked out of the tournament. After witnessing this entire ordeal, I sprint down the mountain trying to go and save Brendan, but when I reach the tomb, we get stopped by the hunters. But they're not alone. They've also brought Alan. And since this nutjob doesn't know anything about what's happening to the world and just cares about becoming champion, and then goes on to challenge me to a battle with the Ace rule, where the loser will die together with their Pokemon. Alan is willing to risk this all because the hunters gave him the legendary Pokemon, the Master of the Skies, Rayquaza, which should make him invincible. At this point, we are trapped and cannot decline, so our only way out of here is to battle him. But even with Pokemon Gods by his side, Alan just wasn't strong enough, as my Sylveon defeated Rayquaza with Moonblasts. Landorus then Earthquaked the next Pokemon Lucario, Electivire used its Thunder to take down Manaphy, Salamence used its Outrages to finish off Shaman, and Lugia then proceeded to set up Calm Minds to clear out Meluetta and Jirachi. And because Alan lost, the Enlightenment that was buried here takes him to the underworld. And in his screams of agony, he just leaves behind Rayquaza's Pokeball, which we pick up and take with us. I then sprint as fast as I can to go and help out Brendan, but it's already too late. He's standing there in the same spot we saw him last time, petrified by Philipp's Hydreigon. With his soul stripped away, he's basically just a shell of a man. And as I burst out in tears, I promise to get him back somehow, some way. Because this is not the way my best friend will go out. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave him behind because we can't carry him. And we also get a distress call from the Rangers team that Hill 101 is under attack. And if we lose that battle, the remote controller will be gone, and all of our effort could have been for nothing. As all of this is happening, Madame Mosk and the hunters are reporting back to Enna, and she basically needs a stronger trainer than Alan to try and take me down because we need to be in real danger for her plan to work. Why? I have no idea. But on the island, there is only one trainer that is stronger, and they somehow have to convince him to go up against me. For now, we can't find out what that trainer is because we have just arrived at Hill 101, where the hunter take away the professor in front of our face, and Enna is facing off against Jane with her Deoxys. In my best efforts, I tried to join this fight, but ended up walking on a teleporting tile that sent me away to some kind of ancient temple. This must all have been part of Enna's plan. She knew I was going to go back there, and was confident that she could beat Jane if we didn't interfere. So now we need to find a way out of here as fast as we can. Luckily, we have a big helper by our side. A talking Chatot that gives me clues on how to get out of here. Turns out one of the walls here was a fake, and once we pushed it down, we walked outside and ended up in central Elysium. And that's when we find out which trainer Madame Mosk was talking about that could actually defeat me. Yaman. He would normally never join any sides, but now he didn't have a choice because Free Wings had captured his daughter, and if he ever wanted to see her again, he needed to defeat me in a Pokemon battle. In the meantime, we run into a group of the WPA and their mercenaries, and we learn that they found and retrieved Brendan to one of their hospitals. They also do not want to interfere against Free Wings because it could actually damage their reputation as a championship, and after exclaiming how frustrated I am with this decision, we head onward and find Rainer again. He's heading back home because he got defeated by Wade. This is a good thing because that means Wade is still alive and kicking, and so he's currently heading to Camp B, which is where we're going as well. But we can't enter the camp without us getting a win over another trainer in the tournament, which is why we ended up running into Yaman. He says that by getting mixed up in all of these affairs, we doomed not only his daughter, but also our friend Brendan. And now we're doomed as well, just like the creatures that used to roam this planet thousands of years ago. He then tells me to follow him so that we can still save Arya, and while on the way we did find a Mega Eviolite which lets us evolve our Salamence into Mega Salamence. I didn't know that I was running into a trap, because when we entered the deepest chamber, Yaman and some of the hunters surround me. And we do indeed see that Arya is locked up behind Yaman, and he then goes on to explain the only way to save her is by surrendering right here, which would lead into Free Wings accomplishing their goals, which is something we can't allow even if our best friend's life is on the line. And after a lot of contemplating within myself, I ended up facing off against Yaman and the Groudon they gave him. And while he may be one of the strongest trainers, his team was one of the easiest to beat. as my Sceptile and Salamence easily overpower his Groudon and Mega Blaziken, and after this, Landorus would spam Earthquakes and Stone Edges to deal with Arcanine, Heatran, Mega Charizard Y, and even his Entei. After the battle, Yaman says that he understands why the Freewings are after me, but it's already too late. Devastation of the world will be happening whether we like it or not. And while Arya may be gone, we can't let her death be in vain. So we run to base camp B as fast as we can, straight into the president's office to explain what's happening. We're surprised to see that he still wants this tournament to continue, as he doesn't even seem to pay mind to Freewings and their entire plan. I tell him that they are indeed up to something really bad, and he does know that this is kind of true, so he promises to contact the police, but the tournament is going on as planned. And the new Elite Four is going to be me, Enna, Wade, and Philillip. This obviously means that Jane got knocked out of the tournament and lost to Enna on Hill 101, so our plan to stop the terraforming machine with the remote controller has fallen into the water. But at least she should be safe somewhere in Camp A, and Wade is currently at the hospital wing here in Camp B to visit Brendan, so we go there as well. And here we find our petrified friend Brendan with Wade sitting next to him. And Wade actually blames himself for all of this, because he was trying to find Philillip so he could try to stop the Wings of Death before something like this could happen. Because of his devotion, he even ignored Jane's distress call, but I tell Wade that not all hope is lost, because we have Rayquaza, and without it, their plan can never succeed. And since we've captured Braxias as well, it's basically only Enna left at this point. So let them come. Let them try and take Rayquaza. We're here and ready to protect what we love, our home country. And we know where the machine is going to be held, on top of that mountain, which coincidentally is probably where the final battle will take place as well. So Wade tells me to go and rest up before all of that happens. However, I couldn't sleep at night, so I started to check out some of the surrounding buildings and ended running into the man of devastation himself, Philillip. As usual, I try to confront him over his actions and why he did this to Brendan, but he nearly seems to have lost his mind because he recognizes me as one of his sisters and even asks me where his other sister is. I then say that I am not his sister, and he then says, I know, they're dead, and avenging them will be the last thing I do. Then I will finally be free. I can't help but to be mad at him, but at the same time, I also feel pity, because he has been through a lot and the dragon is still controlling his emotions, but there really isn't anything I can do about this right now. So I leave him alone and head back to the president's office because he has some news from Jane. But when we arrive in his office, there's nobody here, so I start searching around and eventually find a CD that opens up a secret passage. This led out into a mysterious special place called the Jade Cave. Everything here was blue, and I even felt like I was hallucinating because I saw a spirit of Jane wandering through the entire cave, so I tried to follow it around. And this eventually led me to the heart of the cave where the spirit of Jane was being held by the president. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't the president at all. It was Madame Masque in yet another disguise. After unmasking her, she explains that the Jade Cave is blue because of one special thing, the Soul Well. It was constructed back in the day by the Enlightened Men to somehow link the past to the present, which allowed them to bring the ones they once loved back to life. So this means that Freewings killed Jane, but we can somehow still save her because her soul hasn't departed yet. And even though I know this is a trap because Enna wants me to go inside of this well, if it's the only way to save Jane, I'll be putting the fate of the world on the line. And so we follow Madame Masque into the Soul Well and go through every aspect of Jane's life. We see moments with her father Drake where she was still a child. We also see how she got her first Pokemon Feebas, how she encountered and captured Suicune, started her own gym, and even the moments where she joined the Rangers and met me. And at the end of the cave, we see Jane herself, but I immediately notice that this is probably just Lady Mask in a disguise, because she says that she never wants to leave this place because here she's the queen, she's stronger than me, stronger than everybody, and even says that she's the one who's jealous of me. In that moment I knew this wasn't Jane. She would never believe something like that. And my suspicions were confirmed even more when she threw out the legendary Pokemon Kyogre. This gave me no other choice than to battle this imposter so we could end this illusionary charade. I knew this wasn't going to be an easy battle because she had a full rain team. However, Electivire could immediately get first blood on my Lodic. This allowed Sceptile to use energy balls and leaf storms to finish off Primarina and Kyogre. Sylveon could then use Moonblast to take care of Mega Ampharos, and Mega Gardevoir would lose the Psychic type battle against Lugia, because I just started spamming Calm Minds like usual. This wins us the battle. Jane does indeed turn into Madame Mask and then disappears in front of our eyes. I tell her that she'll never be half the woman Jane is, and then try to leave the cave. Little did I know that this wasn't over yet. Enna instantly teleports behind me and says that she's here to kill me with her 2 Deoxys forms. And just as they're about to strike me down, Celebi teleports in to try and save me. And while the mythical onion was able to teleport me out of here, she also got captured by Enna and her psychic powers. This must have been part of her evil master plan all along. Luring me in here was just a ruse to try and get the Celebi. It's because she was my guardian angel, and now they can use its power instead of Kyogre, Groudon, and Rayquaza's to power the machine, so their master plan is now fully completed. All of this got told to me by Madame Mask, and she even goes on to say that we'll be trapped here for eternity. But then I remember that I still have her very own mind prison. So I throw it at her, trap her inside, and pick up Kyogre's Pokeball, which she ended up dropping. Now that we have 2 of the creation gods, we might still have a chance. All we have to do is find a way out of here and reach Enna before she can turn on the machine. And it seems like my main character energy is acting up again, because in that moment the talking Chatot shows up and gets me out of the cave into this weird foresty area. It tells me to follow it even further so it can take me to a place where it's much safer than here and will be protected from the terraforming machine effects because she just turned it on right now. From that moment on, changes start to occur. First, a mist starts to engulf the area, and then everything starts to change. I explained to Chatot that I don't want to leave my friends behind, but we have no choice. If we want to survive and stop Enna's plan, we have to go with it. After agreeing, it uses its special powers to teleport me to a place called the Hidden Valley. After checking out this place, I quickly find some kind of house with berry trees, milk tanks, and so much more stuff that indicates that somebody has been living here. Upon entering the house, we find the Chatot, but I already know this is probably some kind of illusion. And he then shows me his true form, an old man. He explains that this entire place is protected by special spells and that everything else on the island is about to be terraformed. And with the power of Celebi, they will soon revert the rest of the world to a primordial state as well, because it seems like Enna wants it to go back to how it was 20,000 years ago during the Great War. However, he can also sense that she won't be bringing back the Enlightened Men, only the Banished Ones. And if that happens, it will be the end of humankind. I then ask him why Enna would want to do this, because she's just a human. But he then says, is she really? And proceeds to take me into a cave at the back of his house. As we step through it, we start seeing more and more cave paintings because this is what the Enlightened Men left behind for us if something bad would ever happen. And at the end, we see the place where it all comes together. This is where we see a painting of all of the Enlightened Men worshipping the Tree of Life. This is where their civilization was thriving the most. But then the change occurred. A lot of the men became corrupted because of the Dark One, which gave them enhanced psychic abilities. And along with all of its followers, it also created a devastating beast, which was meant to imitate the children of the tree like Kyogre and Groudon. And it even used to be one of the brothers of Lugia, Latias, and Latios, until it got corrupted and joined the Dark One. This is now obviously known as the Wings of Death, the dragon that Philillip controls, or should I say, controls him. Along with this beast, Diaklias or Dark Unknowns were also created. They used to be regular Pokémon but got turned into twisted souls, neither fully dead or alive. And so mindlessly, they follow only the will of the Dark One. They used to be everywhere during the Great War, which is depicted right here in this final painting. Here we see the Dark One's most powerful creation, Metastasia, which was basically a fusion of thousands of Diaklias and basically acted as the Dark One's shield. But somehow, with the help of 4 masters and 3 guardians, the Enlightened Men managed to force the Banished Men away into the fortress atop of Mount Atera. But when the Dark One and Metastasia finally showed up, they basically killed all of the Enlightened forces, which made it seem like they had ultimately lost the war. But in that moment, the Tree of Life also joined the battle and showed off its great power to defeat the Dark One and destroy all of its forces besides the ones that were banished away to Ghost Island. After this battle, the Tree of Life became incredibly weak, which is why the Enlightened Men civilization eventually went extinct, but not before they managed to hide it away somewhere in a cave so it could give birth to the human civilization. And that exact moment was 10,000 years ago. And now the Dark One has returned, ready to plunge the world into darkness. But there's a reason we're here in this exact spot. We have been chosen to save the world. My one and only mission is to locate where the last Enlightened Men buried the tree, so we can wake it up and prevent a second war from ever happening. And while the old man here doesn't exactly know where the Tree of Life is, there is a man, a human man, that once found it. And so he wants us to follow him back to his house so he can tell me about it. As we're heading back, Latias and Lugia come out of their Pokeballs to tell me that their brother Latios is in grave danger. And since we're currently safe here, they want to go and save him. At first, I wanted to follow them to go and save Latios and Brendan, but then I remembered that they wanted to go on their own because my destiny was here in this hidden village. So we parted ways with our two guardians and regrouped with the old man. He explains that a man named Dr. Edgar discovered Elizium over 100 years ago and even created several golem Pokemon. But when he discovered this island, he wasn't alone. His little daughter was with him too. He then called up a ton of his men and built a lab here where he conducted experiments. And now this old man wants me to go and visit the old laboratory so we can find out where the tree might be buried. So he hands over the old lab key, we insert it into the spot where it needs to be inserted, and enter the secret laboratory through a bush. After looking around for a bit, we end up finding notes on his research, and even a statue of this large golem-like creature that we know as Regigigas. Further in, we found photographs and posters of the entire crew, and noticed that the girl, our guardian angel, the one we met at the lake, also used to work here as a scientist, but she has been missing for over 50 years. And the weird thing is that she should be like 80 now, but whenever we see her, she looks as young as in the pictures here. So we're practically being followed or protected by a ghost. We also found a special key that led us into another strange cave, and at the end, a shadow ball containing Regigigas goes on to attack me, as it was probably stuck here for the last 50 years. I use Blaziken's Sky Uppercut to deal with it, but then suddenly, as it's defeated, the world around me starts to spin. And the next thing I know is waking up inside of a flashback of the lab. Here we see Regigigas locked inside of a tank. Next to it, we see Dr. Vogeln, his daughter, and our guardian angel that turns out to be named Dr. Evans. And upon closer inspection, we see that Dr. Vogeln's daughter is actually Enna. We learned that Dr. Vogelin is currently extracting Regigigas' blood so they can experiment with it, and Dr. Evans is totally opposed to this idea. For whatever reason, Evans also tries to convince the doctor to go back to the cave where they found this guardian, but Vogelin refuses to give her the coordinates and tells her to go back to work. Luckily for her, Enna thinks the exact same and has been to that cave and makes a deal with Dr. Evans. She'll give away the coordinates, but in return, she asks her not to tell anybody else. She can go up there, see what she wants to see, and then return here. She then gives away the coordinates, which we remember ourselves, and we then get pushed into another flashback at the Atera mountaintops. This is where we find Dr. Evans and follow her around until she reaches the cradle. But instead of being greeted by the Tree of Life, she once again encounters Enna. From this conversation, we learn that this woman, Dr. Evans, was the chosen one before me. She was just born 100 years too early. The little girl also says that Enna isn't even her real name, and that behind this chamber is another sealed room where the Tree of Life lies. And after explaining all of this, she kills Dr. Evans in cold blood with Deoxys. She then probably reincarnated into me, which is why she has been my guardian angel for so long. The flashback then ends and we are back in the real world. I then proceed to pick up an Ultra Eviolite and sprint as fast as I can to the old man to tell him what happened. He says that the only thing that matters is that I found the location of the tree, everything else is redundant. But there's still a few things that just aren't making any sense. Like, why did Enna need the lab and Dr. Vogeln? Why did they extract the blood of Regigigas? And why did she feel the need to kill Dr. Evans if she wasn't going to threaten Enna anyway? The old man says that all of these answers will hopefully be answered, but now it's time for me to leave this place. We have done everything we could here. All we have to do is go to those coordinates and find the Tree of Life. So he leads us to a secret passage that allows us to leave this place, but just before we leave, I ask if he's an enlightened man. But he says that he's not a human nor an enlightened man, and the only other thing he can say is that his name once used to be Isaiah. He then tells me to remember that we have the key, and that's all we have to know. After leaving the cave and saying our goodbyes, Isaiah mumbles out in tears,
Finally, I can now join my fathers.
And on the other side, we end up at the feet of the Atera mountain. But everything has changed. Elizium now looks like a dystopia straight out of a bad nightmare. And the moment we step foot inside of the grass here, we get attacked by those dark unknowns, which we learned of from the cave paintings. They were quite easy to defeat, but I couldn't say the same of the banished men that had returned to this planet. They seemed to ambush me behind every corner, ready to strike me down, but I was able to escape and find a familiar face in Lady Morgana at some kind of crossroads. She tells me that I was missing for 3 straight days, which means time was distorted while I was away in the secret valley. Terra did indeed transform the island to what we're seeing right here, and if we don't stop her, the corruption will slowly spread to the rest of the world. I tell Morgana that we need to find some kind of GPS or map so that we can find the Tree of Life to stop it, and she mentions that we should go to the refugee camp, which is where a lot of the survivors are being held. Enna has also revived 3 of the most formidable and wicked generals of the banished men. Their names are Warimo, Nesnor, and Handu, and they're slaughtering every human they can find. With that information, we both split up. She's going to look for her son, and I'm going to the refugee camp. Once we were making our way over there, I found out that Relicanth are also back and polluting the waters of this beautiful island. Shortly after, we arrive at the refugee camp and see that Free Wings have actually teamed up with the Rangers, because nearly all of their grunts weren't aware that this is what was going to happen to the world if Enna came into power. After realizing what was happening, they were like, screw this, I am absolutely not supporting this nut job of a little child, let's try to save humankind instead. It's nice to see everybody working together, but once we're inside, April immediately takes me to her uncle, because nearly everybody believed that we were dead. He apologizes for wanting to go after Lord Braxis so desperately. If we didn't do that, all of this might not have happened. But I tell him that there's no use in crying over spilt milk, because now is the time for action, not of reminiscing. And that brings us to Mike, who has a computer that can pinpoint any location from coordinates. So I end up giving him the coordinates to the Cave of the Tree of Life, and he says it is very close to the top of the mountain. Once we put the location into our phone, we have no more time to waste, and tell April to stay behind to take care of these people while I go to explore this post-apocalyptic world. And once we said our goodbyes, the first thing I did was enter one of the temples that had a portal in it, which led me to some place called Usifinor. And for whatever reason, it seems unaffected by the terraforming machine. And after doing some detective work, we find people here too. But there's something wrong with them, because they all want me to eat some kind of fruit. It's almost like they're brainwashed. Naturally, we decline to eat all of those fruits and even find the tree that is dropping them. This opted me to get to the root of the problem. Quite literally, because I entered the cave that led me underground, where we not only found trapped banished men, but also got attacked by shadow balls controlled by vines. And at the heart of the cave, we found who was behind all of this. A blob-like plant that creates a version of myself using its vines and says that I don't belong here. It then tries to make me eat its fruits by attacking me in a Pokemon battle, and if we lose here, we'll be stuck forever, brainwashed just like the other people. Naturally, it only used plant-based Pokemon like Mega Sceptile and Venusaur, but with Pokemon like Salamence and Blaziken by my side, I could easily overpower them. After this, we asked the Usifinor some questions and learned that it was born from the darkness over 10,000 years ago in the last war. The reason it trapped those banished men is because they failed it all those years ago, and it doesn't want to give them a second chance. So now it started to brainwash actual people and treats them as its own children, because making them eat the fruit gives them eternal happiness. After telling it that brainwashing all of these people is not okay and that it should release them, it says that it's going to kill me, and in a flash of white light, we leave the cave and obtain a Wonder Seed. I left this temple behind and ended up running into Rainer and his ranger team. But there was a big problem. There's totems all around this place, and if you end up walking into their eyesight, you have to battle them. And if you lose the battle, they take control of your body and bring you to a nearby red tower. So we promised to help out the ranger team by defeating all of the totems we come across and eventually getting into the red tower, where we meet a floating head called Mord the Alchemist. And it's planning to use my kind in all sorts of experiments. But it also knows my name and that I'm the chosen one. It then explains that the final battle is not against him, but against his master, Enna. And he then makes a proposition. He has found 50,000 Pokédollars. And technically, we can use this money to buy items that will help us out in the battle against Enna. If I took this money, he would be able to keep all of these rangers. That was the deal. And I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't fully reading this part as I was playing through the game, so I just clicked yes, got my money, and left those rangers there to be experimented on. But don't worry, because if we save the world, they'll be free anyway. So with my pockets filled with cash, we headed on further. In the meantime, Enna is scheming a terrible plan. She knows I'm heading to the Tree of Life and orders both of her generals, Nisdor and Warimo, to take me down before it's too late. And to ensure that they don't fail, she also gave them 2 Regigigases that are infused with her soul power. But there is also a third new general, the red-masked hunter that we've already seen before. And when she unmasks him, we see that it's actually Gray, who's been a loyal servant of her for quite some time. With their objective clear, Enna heads out to the top of the mountain, where she can raise her most powerful child to ensure victory. In the meantime, we actually ran into Wade. He was being chased down by Warimo and has also been infected by a deadly disease that is slowly spreading through the refugee camp. He's also found a prison where Jane and some other prisoners are being held and needs my help in order to save them. So we stay close by, avoid a ton of traps, and eventually reach the cave. In the meantime, we also see Gray, who has captured the professor, and he's currently waiting for his mother Morgana to come and save him. Rama tries to get to his son by saying that, hey, look at what your master Enna is doing. Is this really what you want for the rest of the world? To which Gray answers that it was his machine who did this, shoving the blame on his father yet again, even though it's definitely not his fault. A little later, me and Wade end up finding the prison where our friends are being kept, and we plan on storming it. But not alone. We also have Morgana with us, who, with her troops, creates a diversion for the banished men so we can go into the castle unnoticed. As we arrive at the gate, we see that Drake and Yaman are here to help us out too. In here, we should be able to find Arya, who was presumed dead, which is why Yaman is joining us, but also Professor Rama and Jane. The place is, however, filled with psychic traps that Morgana is going to dispel as much as she can. As we move further into the fortress, all of us are starting to get occupied with fighting hunters. And along with them was of course Yaman, who actually gave me the Pokeball of Groudon, which would complete our weather trio that can hopefully help us out in some of the final battles that are coming up. And there's a big one, alright, because when we reach the end of this prison here, we see Morgana challenging down her own son. But not to a Pokemon battle. Instead, she's trying to reason with him to let Rama go, because all of this is her fault. All she ever wanted for him was to have a normal life and a family. But he's blinded by rage and throws out his Typhlosion to attack his own mother. And that's when I jump in. You are crazy. You used my Pokemon that you stole to attack your own mother? What are you doing? Gray then says that she isn't his mother anymore and that his only family is Enna, to which I say, hey, that's a load of bullcrap. Is Enna going to be your friend together with those generals once the world has been totally annihilated? I don't think so. And I can see in his soul that these statements are getting to him. And to hopefully fully snap him out of it, I go ahead and challenge him to one battle to see who's stronger once and for all. And we absolutely wallop his ass. First, Landorus takes down my starter Pokemon Typhlosion with Earthquake. Sceptile then leaf storms his Mega Gyarados back into oblivion. Blaziken knocks out Cradily with a Sky Uppercut. Electivire's Thunder shock Archeops out of the sky. Salamance's Outrage takes care of Kamo-O, and Blaziken finishes off Mega Gengar with Flare Blitz. Gray then doesn't understand how he lost, so I tell him that he's not strong, and I'm not talking about his Pokemon or battling skills, he's just not strong enough to see the truth. That only 2 people in this entire world love him. His parents. Rama then tells his son, please leave this place and go search for a family, but don't stay here because this place only brings death. Gray then screams that this isn't over yet and runs to the dungeons of the temple, so me and my squad of heroes promise the professor that we're going to bring him back safely. We follow in his footsteps and see that Wade has already found him. However, Gray seems to show some kind of compassion when Wade starts to cough uncontrollably. He says that he definitely got poisoned by Handu's water. Gray knows this because Warimo has been giving the prisoners this poisoned water so they could have a slow and painful death. However, he says that he isn't the same because he's been giving the prisoners clean water and even planned on killing Warimo. Not a great time to say that because he comes running down the hallway screaming that Gray's a traitor and is just about to stomp on his head. He then stops and throws him against the wall instead and challenges me and Wade to a Pokemon battle, but Wade is clearly in no state to fight. So I take over his legendary Swords of Justice and face off against Warimo and his fossils. Cobalion and Terrakion team up to take down Tyrantrum, Archeops, and Mega Aerodactyl, but then we also see the new Reggie that Enna created, Reggie-Lava. An incredible looking Pokemon, but not strong enough to survive a Hydro Pump from Keldeo. And as we hit a couple more close combats, the final two Tyrantrums are also defeated, which means Warimo failed his task of taking us down. But a measly loss in the Pokemon battle wasn't going to stop him. He turned around and was about to crush Gray with his bare hands, but luckily for him, Morgana teleported in at the right time and used her psychic powers to make this zombie war general disappear. We then all group up together to free the prisoners, and everybody is so glad to see that Jane and Arya are still alive, even though they were poisoned by the waters. Once we're all back together, Yaman takes Arya away so she can rest up, and Gray has decided to join us in our efforts from here on out. As we start to talk, we notice that Jane is also pretty roughed up. And while she doesn't want to go back to the ship to rest up, there seems to be no other choice, otherwise she might end up dying. So I tell her that she's done enough, she doesn't have to help me anymore, I'm a big girl now, and I'm sure that this ragtag team we still have here are able to do the job. She then bursts out in tears of proudness and tells us to go get them. Drake then takes his daughter away to the doctors on the ship, and Gray then tells me that Enna is at the top of the mountain to rebuild an ancient fortress, so she can raise her most powerful child, Metastasia. And in order to get there ourselves, we need to pass through Nesnor's den, one of Enna's generals. But unlike Warimo, he has exceptional psychic powers and even commands the legendary bird of destruction, Yveltal. So we need to be ready to face him once we get there. Then there's the third General Handu, whose main objective seems to be poisoning the waters. And because we helped Morgana save her son, she's going to try and help us with saving Philillip. But we of course can't do this without Wade and his Swords of Justice's help. Now that we all seem to have different objectives, we head out in the different directions, but on my path I see a ton of dark unknowns flying to the top of the mountain, which probably means Enna has already started to construct Melastasia. And a little further up along a bridge, we run into Nesnor. He's brought an entire army of necromanced banished men with him, knowing that I would be severely weakened if I had to take all of them on before him. He's also found a refugee camp with his Yveltal and plans on destroying that as well, but first he needs to take my soul right here, right now. However, just as we're about to clash, all of his skeletal friends turn into a pile of bones. Almost like all of his powers were suddenly disabled. He then vanishes after saying that he'll deal with me later. I don't know what just happened, but I'm glad it did, because a little further up we run into Gray, Morgana, and Wade. They have found Nesnor's den, but we have to go through this Soul Valley, which seems to be a cold, harsh environment filled with fragmented souls. So we run through this war-ridden wasteland and eventually find the ladder that leads into his den, which is also known as the Underworld. Down here we see tons of lost souls and even weird black Skeletor creatures that attack me. But in the meantime, Philillip has actually infiltrated this place as well and opened up a rift which has weakened Nesnor's powers. Nesnor knew about this and is now facing off against him. But I don't think this ended up going well for him, because he actually shows up right in front of us and asks for our help, because Philillip has clearly defeated him, and now he wants to team up with us so we can defeat Philillip and clear this chaos up, so that all the souls can go back to rest. At first I'm like, hey, why should we help someone like you? But he then has a pretty damn good explanation. So apparently this entire flow of souls here is a big and giant soul well, and it is needed even by the Tree of Life to reincarnate people. Like for example, in my former life as Dr. Evans, I got killed by his master Enna, and 16 years ago the Tree of Life resurrected me as the person I am today. But if that isn't enough to convince us, he also captured Latios, Latias, and Lugia and promises to free them if we defeat Philillip. Since we technically already have to take down Philillip and his dragon, And while this might seem like a perfect scenario, we know that he's going to stab us in the back once we do so. So we end up declining his offer and tell him that we're going to fix this on our own terms. He then vanishes, but Gray is going to stay behind to use his psychic powers to try and free the 3 guardians, while me, Wade, and Morgana push onward so we can deal with Philillip. But we ended up getting separated at some point, and then I heard a voice that sounded an awful lot like Brendan's calling out to me. So we followed it, and it led me to a soul well, which we ended up jumping into. And it transported us to a dream dimension of our home island, Krista. After looking around for a bit, we end up finding Brendan inside of the professor's lab, and he says that he's arranged a party and invited everybody because it's his 17th birthday. And in this world, he also thinks he became the Pokémon champion, because he was able to beat me in the final, and would like a replay of that battle. So we give it to him, but now we are the ones who come out victorious. This seems to snap him out of this state, and he returns back to his good old self, even asking if we are dead as well. And so I ask him to forgive me for not being able to save him. But he wasn't mad at me in the first place, and even wants me to forgive Philillip as well, because he clearly doesn't know what he's doing. Because in his final moments before he departed, he could feel his pain and suffering, and now he wants us to save him. And the way to accomplish this is by telling him that his sisters are safe wherever they may be, and that Brendan also forgives him. And so I promise Brendan that I will save him and everybody else before departing this realm and finding my way to the core of the underworld where we face Philillip. I tell Philillip to stop right now to close the rift in this core, but he refuses to do so, because he's trying to bring his sisters back this way, and once he's done, he will close the hole up. So we tell him that he might be able to release their souls, but they will never ever be alive again. This will eventually turn them in forever suffering ghosts. But he knows all of this and is going to use his dragon to find bodies, strip away their souls, and place their sisters' souls in it. That way, they'll be able to live by his side again. I don't think I have to explain why this is so morally incorrect. And in one last attempt, I try to tell him that this is something his sisters would never want. But he says that he knows his sisters better than anyone and isn't going to let words get to him. And in that moment, he throws out his Mega Aggron, ready to face off against his very best friend, me. And from here on out, it's an all-out brawl, with my Landorus taking it down with 2 Earthquakes, Darkrai falling to a Moonblast of my Sylveon, Mega Tyranitar getting hammer-armed by Landorus as well, his Mega Houndoom gets smashed by my Blaziken Sky Uppercut, and last but not least, Mega Charizard X gets defeated by my Mega Salamence. But this only left him with one Pokemon, his Mega High Dragon, now stronger than ever. And in order to defeat it, Wade hands me his Keldeo, who might not have been able to fully kill the High Dragon, but it definitely weakened it enough so that my Salamence could hit one last Outrage, which defeated the almighty Wings of Death. This strips the beast of its powers and reverts it back to its original form before it disappears. Philillip then has an existential crisis, saying that he killed Brendan and can't live on like this, and at one point it seems like he's going to take his own life, just like Wade's mother did when she got freed of the beast. But just as he's about to jump into the stream of souls, the voices of his sister come from the afterlife to calm him down. They tell him that they're fine in the afterlife and that one day they will be reunited, but until then they want Philillip to live a full life that he can enjoy to the fullest. And after they say that they forgive and love him so much, they then disappear, which takes a big weight off of Phillipp's shoulders. And while he is going to let the past be the past, our little journey here isn't over, because Nesnor has just entered the room and plans to take control of the core once again. We try to stand in his way, but he knows our Pokemon are weakened by the battle with the big dragon. And while this might be true, he didn't calculate that Gray would also come in with the legendary guardians Latios, Latias, and Lugia, because he managed to free them. And with their combined powers, we would definitely stand a chance against Nesnor. His first 3 Pokemon, Yveltal, Mega Absol, and Mega Banette, all got defeated by my Electivire's Thunderbolts and Low Sweeps. Salamence would then be strong enough to take care of Alakazam and Gengar, leaving it with the new Golem, Reggie Ghoul. But not even that beast could stand up to Latios' Drago Meteor. this defeat, Lugia throws the general into the abyss, which kills him. Now there's only one more general to go, but luckily we can take these 3 guardians with us to face up against him once the time comes. And while me and Wade are going to push on, Gray and Morgana are going to stay behind to try and repair the core. When we reach the road that leads to Enna's fortress, however, we get a call on our Imagiphone that tells us that the Cave of the Tree of Life is just east of here. So we tell Wade to stay behind and not push onward on his own because he's in no state to fight, and once he agrees to do this, we head over to the cave. We quickly find the place where my past self was murdered by Enna, but now things are different. We're able to continue onward, but the deepest part of the cave was blocked off by polluted water that could only be crossed by a bridge. So I searched my surroundings and ended up finding planks to build a bridge, but all of them were protected by shadow balls. Not that that was going to stop us, because shortly after we acquired the pieces, built the bridge, and move on to the next chamber where we find a big lake that's basically just fully polluted by Hondu. Speaking of him, look, he just surfaced right here on the back of a Relicanth. But for whatever reason, he can't really speak and just blurts out screams of nonsense. So I immediately prepared to deal with him. As expected, he has a Relicanth and then a full-on poison type team. So with a Thunderbolt from Electivire and tons of Earthquakes, we eventually even see his next golem, Regivenom. But it doesn't get too much screen time, as 2 Earthquakes from Landorus can easily take care of it, and with one last Stone Edge, his final Pokemon, Crobat, also gets defeated. And he and his Relicanth then disappear forever. After finding a way past the lake, we eventually end up in the room of the Tree of Life. This is where we get greeted by our past self, Dr. Evans. But this isn't really her, it's actually the spirit of the Tree of Life that has taken her form, so that it feels more familiar when we're speaking to her. Throughout my past lives, I've always shown so much kindness, which is why she chose me to battle the Dark One, which has inhabited the body of a little girl that died centuries ago, which we now know as Enna. But she believes that we can stop them together, and she's going to do that by taking the form of a special Pokemon that can aid me in this battle. This form is called Xerneas, which means Tree of Life in the old Enlightened language. She then disappears and turns into Xerneas and immediately joins my party. And together we head to the top of the mountain to have one last battle to end it all. However, in the meantime, the rest of our forces have already stormed the fortress and have constructed a plan to take down Enna themselves. First, Captain Drake goes for the surprise attack. And the cool thing about this entire event is that you get to play as Enna and have her Deoxys on your own side. This really gives you a feeling of how strong it really is, with insane stats that make it nearly invincible for any trainer to take down, and moves like flash steps that immediately up your evasion to the max level so your opponent can't even hit their moves. So naturally, she defeats Captain Drake while only using one form of her Deoxys, the Speed one. But this wasn't the full plan, because straight after, Gray and Morgana attack her too. They had a pretty good strategy that worked with a Perish Trap, however, Enna was also prepared for this with moves like Taunt on her team. Combine this with a defensive Deoxys that also had access to Nightshade, and soon after, even these two would be defeated. Enna then orders her Deoxys to destroy Gray, but Morgana is able to jump in front of him and gets killed instead, right in front of her own son's eyes. She departs from this world after saying how much she loves him, and in this moment when our team is totally caught off guard, Yaman jumps in to protect Gray because he's totally out of it. She goes on to defeat his entire team except for Entei, but after Yaman tells Gray that his mother is dead, he starts to scream out in agony and spews out an ancient spell that can only be created when someone reaches their height of their wrath. By casting this spell, the user forfeits their life to merge with a Pokemon, which ended up being Yaman's Entei, which was now granted an unfathomable amount of power, but only for a limited time. And with this Pokemon's power, they were actually able to defeat Enna and their Deoxys. But just when they're about to deliver the final blow on Enna herself, she brings out her final Pokemon, a Cubone. Or at least that's what it looks like. But Yaman sees straight through it. It's a hollow shell, a soulless husk, which once held her child's essence. And she then shows off what a tiny fraction of her power can do against their greatest effort. It uses a move called Death Pulse, which poisons and weakens the opponent, and then proceeds to lay a curse on the enraged Entei, which ends up killing it. Enna really made this look like child's play. And while our allies may not have been able to defeat her, we have just made contact with the tree and are about to storm the castle to hopefully put an end to this. As we're walking through the snowy tundra, Xerneas unlocks the Pokeballs of Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza so we can use their power against Enna. And Xerneas then tells us to look up, and what we see is something straight out of a horror movie. Millions of dark unknowns are gathering together to create Malastasia. But in order for us to get in, there's a couple of rules we need to follow, because the palace is protected by a dark spell, which only allows us to bring in a limited amount of items and legendary Pokemon. So I fully prepare by building my party and bag and transform Rayquaza and Latios into their mega forms before entering the Sky Dome. At a certain point, the road gets blocked off, which means there's no way to return. And Enna tried to stop me by sending out all of their Deoxys forms. The godly power of Xerneas and Kyogre allowed us to defeat them, and so I asked Xerneas how there can actually be 3 Deoxyses here. It reveals that there's only one form of Deoxys that's been projecting these other guys with its psychic powers. That form will be waiting for us in the final room where we face off against Enna. In the next room, we see the devastation that was left behind from the fight between our friends and Enna, and luckily for us, Morgana left behind a spiritual message, which explains to us that they've probably died in the fight against Enna if we see this, but there's something way worse waiting for me. Enna has created a new Dark Child, a war golem that was forged over decades through twisted arts and science, and made specifically to counter the powers of Xerneas. It has no weaknesses, and physical attacks may be our only path to victory. With this wonderful information, we know how to counter the golem, which we ended up facing together with the Dark Unknown in the next chamber. And we learned that it's given a name, Tartarus. It has such immense strength that it one-shots my Kyogre with a single Thunder Punch, but Xerneas is able to take down its companion, the Dark Unknown, with a single Moonblast. In the following turns, it started to slay my giant legendaries until only Mega Rayquaza and Landorus were left. But luckily, they were able to combine their Earthquakes and Outrages into one certain attack that struck down the Golem. With it out of the way, we could climb the last pair of stairs up to the world's top, where we witness Enna using Celebi's powers, combined with all of the lost souls from the Soul Well, to power the terraforming machine and create Metastasia. And when that is fully completed, nobody can stop her from creating her own twisted world. She then summons the ultimate form of Deoxys together with Metastasia by her side and orders me to bring out Xerneas so we can have our clash for the fate of the entire world. The first thing she does is set up a substitute so her Deoxys can be attacked. Then Metastasia uses a Void Veil to give it the Wonder Guard ability, so now we can only hit it with super effective moves. In the meantime, I'm setting up Geomancies with my Xerneas and combine the power of its Moonblast with Kyogre's Water Spout to take down Metastasia. Now she only has her ultimate Deoxys. And while it may look indestructible because Xerneas was the only one who could hit it with Moonblasts, making the rest of my team obsolete, I wasn't going to be playing fair. So I used full restores on my Xerneas whenever it got to low health so that it could always attack every single turn, and this would be too much even for Deoxys to handle, as one last Blast of the Moon ended it off. And after that devastating hit, the Dark One and all of its creations start to fade away. And it then mutters out its last words.
It is such a quiet thing, the fall.
And even though we won, there was one more thing left to do, saving Celebi from the mega terraforming machine. Once Xerneas takes out the power source, the world returns back to normal. And we follow Xerneas to the real top of the world, where it thanks me on behalf of every person and Pokemon. Because without my help, we would have lost everything. We faced off against the greatest danger our world has ever seen, and won. But we didn't do it alone. Without the help of Xerneas and my friends, this also could have never happened. So Xerneas tells me to cherish them because they are part of what makes life worth living. And this made me realize that we did save the world, but I couldn't save everyone. I couldn't save my friend Brendan. And while it is true that the world will never be the same again because many lives were lost, but life is full of surprises. It can grow, flourish, or even come back when you least expect it. But now it's time to say goodbye. to the Tree of Life. And while we may never see her again in physical form, she reminds me that life is everywhere. So wherever we look in the future, we'll be able to see her. And as a token of our eternal friendship, she's even going to let me keep Xerneas as a Pokemon so we can fight any evil that may still exist. And in its parting words, the Tree of Life says this:
Never change, Zwiggo. Never forget who you are. And never give up on the good that exists everywhere in this world.
She then vanishes and we start to make our way down the mountain, where we have a reunion with our friends, Jane, Wade, Drake, Yaman, and Arya. They've all been cured of their poison. We all have one last super wholesome moment together, because another miracle actually ended up happening. Brendan woke up from his petrified coma and is totally okay. This also goes for all the others that were petrified by the wings of death, so I guess way more lives were saved than we thought. Captain Drake then uses his boat to bring us back home, only this time it's without any sabotages. And a couple of weeks later, we wake up inside of our new home in Azuria City, where we're supposed to have a friendly battle against Wade, because in all of this time, we've actually never fought him. So I guess it's time to determine who the real strongest trainer of all time is. And so our ragtag group of friends group up one last time to witness this battle, where we show the world one last time that we are indeed the strongest trainer that has ever lived. And our story ends off with one last call of the Rangers HQ that sends our friends on another mission, showing that while the story may be over, their lives will forever continue in peace. Holy! I know, that was the biggest video I have ever brought out. Over 3 hours. Crazy. But I honestly had a ton of fun working on this project. Pokemon Elysium is a masterpiece. Yes, it might have a couple of edgy things here and there in the story, but honestly, everything flows together so well that it almost feels like an entire anime, which is a very good thing, by the way. And I hope that this video sort of translated that feeling to you as well. And lastly, I want to thank all the members of the channel who make big videos like this possible by supporting me so we can try to give you the best end product possible. Really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And once again, a big thank you to Battle Frontier Versus for sponsoring the video. Definitely don't forget to check them out.